Hey guys, welcome to the Editing Bard, the channel that brings you writing tips that make sense. I'm super excited today because we are talking about one of my all-time favorite subjects, which is fan fiction, and answering the question, can fan fiction make you a better author? And so I have collected a panel of experts, who, experts, there's quotation marks on either side, but it's totally fine. And we're going to be talking about that and kind of going through some of the things that we've seen people do really badly. Because if we admit it, about 99% of most fan fiction sucks horribly. And we're going to be talking about maybe like how you can actually improve doing that. So the names that everybody has, just so that way you guys are aware, are how you can find them on Wattpad specifically. Because I know that sometimes there's fanfiction.net, there's Archive of Our Own, there's all that kind of stuff. So you'll see that instead of the Editing Bard today, I am Silverhand19, Slayer of Innocent Characters and Tormentor of Souls. I can fit all of that into it, so I just went with Silverhand. I'm going to let everybody else introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Julianne.
Hi. Okay. I'm Julianne. For a long time, I just went by Silz online, so people will probably refer to me as that. I didn't start using my actual name until I started considering writing what I want to do with my life. For the record, my username is the same on FFN, AO3, and Wattpad. It's only different on Tumblr. Yeah, okay, so I've been writing since early high school, which is like 7 years now. People get really surprised because they're like, you only started in high school? Like, yeah. I pretty much I used to exclusively write fan fiction, started with Marvel and Tolkien, and have done a million different fandoms now. But then I started writing originals, got 2 pieces accepted into my college literary magazine, so that was exciting. And now I'm back into writing fan fiction in this crazy quarantine. So yeah. Nice.
Archie.
All right. The Architect only really exists on Wattpad. I've been writing since I've been writing since early high school myself, and then can't say I have much experience in publishing, but I have written or started a couple of originals myself, and yeah, going into sophomore year of college, and I am still writing fan fiction because I'm a loser.
No, it's the best. This is what we need to change. Sorry.
Silz is not at all passionate about
I'm not at all.
She absolutely loathes fan fiction in every form. No. All right, Corvus, how about you?
Okay, I've been writing since middle school. All my middle school work is trash. I don't read that. And I've actually only written one fan fiction. It was for The Princess Bride, and I didn't finish it, but I was enjoying it when I was writing it.
It was pretty cool. I read it.
Nice. I don't see many fan fictions about Princess Bride.
That's why I read it. I was like, that's cool.
Wait, where was this published? I don't remember seeing this.
It was a while back. I don't remember when I published it.
It was up on Wattpad for a little while.
And why is it no longer there?
Briefly.
I don't know.
Come on, man.
I didn't finish it.
So?
He's
post it back. I'll post it back ASAP. Okay. I didn't think it was going anywhere. Okay.
I feel called out by it wasn't finished really bad.
Oh, yeah. That's persecution right there.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I never finished any of my original works either. So there's that.
I still have not finished book 5 of my fan fiction, and
book
like
5?
It's all planned. What's that?
Book 5?
Yeah, book 5 of 6.
Jeez.
See, okay. I feel called out again.
You have like 20.
Me? I think my work count is up to almost 60, but
Million?
Yeah. I actually looked at my word count. I crossed the 1,500,000 mark just recently. I was like, ooh, have I been writing too much? But yeah, I'm still did you read Fëanorial Chronicles or just the Archie just book one of that one?
I think
Silmarillion one.
I think I did just the
Silmarillion one. Yeah. Okay. Well, see, you're talking book 5, so book 5 of 6. I'm currently on. It's been 6 years now since I started those, and I'm currently on technically book 5, although there's been some like small things in between, and I've got I think 5 more planned. Because yeah, so that's a mess. But I've not finished that one, and it's been 2 years, and a lot of my like Verity is getting really mad at me. She was like, "Why haven't you finished it?" Like, I'm sorry. I took a break from fantasy fanfics to write historical fiction ones, so that's my excuse.
Yeah, and we got Don in the house, and Don has done tons of fanfic for the Star Wars universe. That is, I must say, one like that makes Tolkien's universe feel so small compared to, I mean, I was on Quora looking at why like who is the most powerful Sith, and somebody was advocating that it was Darth Vader, and he listed out a ton of reasons, and I was like, that's pretty legit. I personally think Revan, because Revan's a badass. But they were talking like, well, and then they're a master of Form 6, and then listing off of all of these styles and listing all these other things, and I'm just like, people were, I've seen people get in arguments over the type of steel used in Mandalorian plate armor and the phase or the mark that it is in, and I was just like, yeah, no, that's a whole level of nerd that I have not attained.
I think I've attained that level, but only in Tolkien, like nothing else. Although I will say about Star Wars fan fiction, so I consider myself a Star Wars fan. That's probably, I have like my main fandoms, and then like Star Wars and some of the Buffy and Firefly, and those are like one step below. But I fell in love. Yeah, I know. I'm such a brown coat, but also it hasn't reached the level of the other ones. But I have been looking for Ahsoka Tano fanfics, like good ones. See, here, we'll get into this. Because I love Ahsoka, and I obviously will not talk about anything about the Clone Wars season 7 because of spoilers, but like somehow it's made me love her more, which I didn't think was possible. And I was like, yes, give me more content. Like, I need more Ahsoka in my life. And then like it's so hard to find, not only like I'm just a very, very picky reader, even when it comes to like published books. And so finding that fanfic is a struggle, which is why I write it, because then I'm like, I might as well write my own, write the story I want to read. So, yeah, most definitely. And I wholeheartedly agree with this, Don. Darth Revan, he's a bro. All right, so let's start off with, oh wait. We have somebody popping up here. I'll highlight it when it comes up. Stupid delay. But we have Joel saying Ahsoka, oh, there he goes, is by far, in my opinion, the best female character in all of Star Wars. Amen.
I don't know anything about Ahsoka. I have not even watched all of the Clone Wars. I've watched like little bits and pieces. And it was when she was like yay high to Anakin. And then I've seen scenes or snippets of like her facing off Vader, all that kind of stuff. But I would still agree that she is probably the best female character, because she's not that overpowered, Rey. She's also not, I need to be rescued all the time. Mm-hmm. She's that balance of both. She's competent as a fighter, but she also still needs people in her life, like from just kind of what I've seen. And I think that's what makes a really solid character, is those that they're still competent and they rely on other people.
I don't know if you guys can see it, but that's an Ahsoka piece of artwork right up there.
Definitely cannot. I will take your word for it.
I told you it would happen. I told you that was a threat.
That was still just breaking stuff.
But you weren't even touching the keyboard. Come on, man.
I know. I forgot my earbuds were attached. But anyways, I was trying to describe to someone like my aesthetic yesterday, and I said the only word for it is chaos. But yeah, to me, Ahsoka. To me, I love her because she literally goes from a character that some people hated her, but a lot of it was just like, what is she doing here? Like, she doesn't seem to have a purpose, to developing into like literally probably one of my favorite female characters of all time in any medium. Because she goes from, Leia's great, and I love Leia. I have a Leia t-shirt, but Ahsoka is just, you get to watch her develop. The movie, she was questionable. Although, she was questionable, but her relationship with Anakin too, I could go on. And Obi-Wan, and I love him.
Obi-Wan is a boss. I mean, I think we can all agree that Obi-Wan is boss, just in general. Okay, so let's dive into kind of the main question here: is can fan fiction make you a better author? Because I think that what ends up happening, or at least what I've seen play out, is you have like in politics, you have far left and far right and it's either they're like, it's the worst thing ever, it's an insult. Hey Eva, welcome. And then there's also on the other end where they're like, fan fiction is life, and they write it, but it's not necessarily good, and it's usually not good. And then in between is everyone else, that very small percentage that is like, we're just gonna write our fan fiction and meet in the bubble that works for us. And we don't really tell people, like, you don't tell people you write fan fiction. That's like admitting you do meth. It's like you don't.
My brother is a math major. That calls both of us out so hard. I'm the fan fiction
meth,
writer.
not math.
Oh, math. I was gonna be like, math?
Yeah, no, very different. No, you can do math and not be ostracized, at least most of the time. So how can, or like in your guys' opinion, we'll just kind of start here. Just touch on this. Yes, Ewan McGregor did a fantastic job of doing Obi-Wan. Well, and funny as it is, a little fun fact, the guy who originally played Obi-Wan actually hated his role with a fiery passion. He actually hated the idea of Star Wars. He thought it was stupid. He thought it wasn't going to amount to anything. He was just so he probably wasn't the best because he absolutely despised it. Ewan McGregor obviously did a fantastic job. In my opinion, I loved him. Anyway, let's start off with, and Corvus, we'll go to you first. Let's just start off with, can fan fiction actually make someone a better author? And then we'll kind of dive into that more as we go.
I think so, because like any kind of experience will hold your skill in writing. Like when you first start out, if you're writing fan fiction to start out, well, over time, no matter what you write, you're gonna get better at it. So I would say it helps.
Yep.
Just not.
Architect, how about you?
I think it really depends. If you're doing it, like if you're putting effort into it and you're really actually, doing something with it, and it's not word vomit, then yeah, I would say just, from experience alone, you're getting better at writing. But also the number of terrible fan fiction that I've read in the last week alone accounts for the fact that there's really a possibility that it's not helping you. So
yeah. Silz, how about you?
Archie.
Oh wait, what were you saying, Corvus?
I was disagreeing with Archie.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Silz, how about for you?
Okay, so if the question is can it, absolutely. If the question is will it, not necessarily. I think is a good way to look at it, because yeah, I mean, I don't know how much in depth you want to go, but like I'll just be very brief. If you take the time, like when I write fan fiction, I do a ton of research and yeah, and so you learn different aspects. I will say you probably don't learn the editing side of writing as much as you learn just the basics of writing. So that's a real drawback. Now, that's not entirely true because I know people who do significant edits. But also, like, will it? Not necessarily if you don't take the time to put in the effort. But like Archie was saying, like if you're by writing, you're getting better at some of the steps at least. So that's always good. Yeah, so I would say overall most of the time, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to improve.
Sure. And I agree with that. I think that when like, can it make you a better author? Absolutely. Because you are slowly, if you're doing it with the intention of it helping you, if you're doing it with intentionality, yes, it can. If you're doing it just because you read 50 Shades of Grey and you're like, they made millions of dollars, I'm going to do the same.
Oof.
No. That's not going to benefit humanity in any way, shape, or form.
Neither did 50 Shades of Grey, so, you know.
Yeah, 150 Shades of fanfic. And none of it will be good. Just paint it black, and then we'll be done. It's really, I mean, it boils down to the intentionality of doing it. You know, so for instance, when I started writing fan fiction, mine was a Lord of the Rings Narnia crossover because I grew up reading both. I loved fantasy. And I dove into that, and I was like 16 at the time. And it was just like wall-to-wall words. There were no paragraphs. I didn't believe in paragraphs at that time in my life.
You are everything I despise in humanity.
Yeah. It is amazing that I'm now editing books, considering like how I started off. And it was just like horrendous. But I
have the same experience, yes.
What's that? I
said I have the same experience with paragraphs and no paragraphs, you know.
Yeah, it's
it's a dark corner of humanity.
Yeah, it is. And I think that it helped develop a love for writing because I enjoyed telling stories or making up stories about the characters that I knew and loved. And that eventually kind of springboarded me into wanting to write my own fantasy novel because, you know, you can't publish fan fiction and not get sued. And so, especially if you're trying to make money off of it.
Yeah.
And over time, when I went back and I actually joined Wattpad and started writing fan fiction again, I did it with the intentionality of bettering my craft and finding out what I was really good at. And I found out I was really good at angst and tormenting my readers and ripping apart their souls and stuffing it back into them, and then they still wanted to come back and more. And so
masochistic. That's
basically. And now I've taken all of those horribly wonderful ideas and inserted them into my novel. It's gonna be fabulous. Actually,
I read that novel.
People live a lot longer in novel than in my fan fiction. Let's see. Joel's got some stuff. Personally, I dislike fanfics because most people don't understand what makes the originals so good, and they only focus on their favorite parts, ignoring the things that made those characters so good. I agree.
Oh man, that is
Can I form a response here? Because the reason I write fan fiction, well, there are many reasons. The one that probably keeps me coming back is my favorite thing to do is look at the characters from the original, analyze them, figure out how they would react to a new scenario and then do it. And so 90% of what I write, as I mean, most of you three probably know, is original character stuff, which automatically has another added stigma to it. Oh, it's going to be a Mary Sue, which, to be fair, there's quite a bit of that. But if you do it right, it's not. And so the reason, a lot of people, it bothers me when I see them writing characters and being like they don't understand the essence of who that character is. And if you understand like how they react to the world, then you can put them in any scenario, whatever AU you want to come up with, coffee shop, there was only one bed, whatever. You can put them there and you can make it believable that was that original character, that original source material character. But no one ever does that, which is really depressing to me.
Sorry.
No, please.
No, I was just gonna say that character studies are like what I live and breathe. I'm terrible at writing myself. Like, I'm not gonna lie about that. But the character studies and the character analysis that I have notebooks filled with just character analysis. Yeah. So like that, if there's a one thing that I've understood, it's that. So when people do that, I literally stop. I can't.
Yeah, one of the things that when I wrote the blog post, how to write fan fiction that doesn't suck, it was addressing the fact that if you make characters do things that are not in their nature to do, you're going to piss off an entire fandom. Like for instance, like Captain America.
That's basically what my Sprite thing was.
Swear.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to just go on this just appetite, it's just like spewing out, dropping F-bombs and stuff like that. That would be against his nature as Captain America. And yet you see fanfics do this with characters. They are doing things outside of their character. That doesn't mean that you can't fiddle around with the characters, but you still have to be true to their core character. If you don't do that, then you end up risking losing whatever audience you were hoping to gain. Joel had another really good one. I think it can start what they call the scribe's spark, as it can help people who want to learn to write and write better, but most don't want to bother with editing and structuring the plot. That's another thing that I see and is incredibly painful, and it burns my iris every time I look at Wattpad, just in general. Sometimes.
To be fair, I think also it stems from fanfiction is a much more broad community where non-traditional English speakers, like non-native speakers, are writing it, but they're writing it in English to reach a bigger audience. So like part of me, as much as I do like look at some fanfics that aren't edited well or don't have proper grammar and go, oh my gosh, like why would I want to read that? Like at the same time, I also give some leeway because it's not fair, at least for me, to like judge a fan. I mean, okay, I am completely willing to judge fanfics. Like this is not me saying that I won't look at a fanfic and say it could have been done better. But yeah, the fact that so many non-English speakers are taking their time to write in English is actually a beautiful thing to me. And so I find it hard to get really critical when it comes to stuff that is obviously like not native English.
Yeah, and I think there is a good distinction. Like I'm going to have a much different expectation for someone who's a non-English speaker. For those who sprechen die English, then it should sprechen.
Yeah.
It should be sprechen into English.
Or they should be willing to learn. Because like a lot of, and that's one of the things that's probably my pet peeve with fan fiction is the lack of willingness to accept constructive criticism. Especially if it's, and I'm not talking like flames, because when I was writing in the beginning, I received my fair share of like, this is the worst thing ever, go kill yourself. But like,
must have been good then.
but like,
so polite,
super nice. But yeah, or like the lack of willingness to use a beta reader, which to be fair, probably most common tag on AO3 for me is no beta, we die like men. But at the but in my defense, I don't use a beta reader because I write and publish so fast that there's no beta reader that can keep up. And I don't want to expect a beta to do that. Especially now that I have enough of editing skills on my own to basically make sure it's just like, at least the grammar's correct.
Right.
So like, yeah. So when I plan, like I do plan, if I finish the Fanorial Chronicles someday in the far future, I have rewrites planned and I'll use betas then. But it all stems from the fact that people aren't willing to accept that, hey, like you've got to learn from what you're writing. I mean, that's why I was saying in the beginning, like you don't necessarily get better writing fan fiction because you might not get any feedback on your work. Right. And as long as it's done correctly, like I always approach it as give them 1 or 2 praise points, sandwiching the concrete, the very specific concrete. So like, this is what you should change, and then offer a solution and then finish it with another point of praise. So that I learned that from taking college writing courses and critique courses. So that's kind of how I approach it. But even me, there's such a stigma about giving someone constructive criticism that, oh my gosh, you're so rude or whatever. I'm like, no, like I recognize that a lot of not all, but a lot of fan fiction authors are young, I'll be stereotypical, young girls who are learning how to write. And I feel like they genuinely want to get better, but they're not willing to take what that means. As long as
maturity level that hasn't been.
And I don't think I was there when I will say the one piece of constructive criticism that has literally stuck with me, it's been 6-7 years now, was someone pointed out on my first draft of my Lord of the Rings fic that I wasn't calculating distance, travel time and distance correctly. It was specifically for Lord of the Rings nerds, the distance between the edge of Breland to Rivendell. I wasn't calculating that correctly. And I was, at the time, I was like, it hurt, it stung to get that constructive criticism. I was like, oh, yeah, like that's true. Like I totally underestimated how long that takes. And it sparked me to go start researching like how far can a horse travel in a day, like measuring miles. It was crazy. I get way too obsessive. But that stuck with me. And that's something I'm really careful about now when I'm writing stories, is figuring out distances. And so if people would, listen to the concrete, it can totally change how they're writing.
Yeah. And I want to come back to that here in just a second, catch up with the chat.
What ifs?
Sort of content that he would enjoy reading. Joel, let me just say that you would. I mean, Silz fics
is what ifs.
As it's about as what if as you can get. And I mean, there's angsty elves, there's angsty maidens. There's feels galore.
Galore. Can I just quickly address the what if thing? So my thing, how I approach fan fiction 90% of the time is, if I change one massive thing, what happens? Like, what are the ripple effects? How would people react? And so the one you've read was, I'll be really quick about it. Basically, one of the tropes in Lord of the Rings fan fiction is modern girl in Middle Earth, or girl falls into Middle Earth, which is like, oh, okay. So I live for it, but I also hate it because it's never done. Let me shout out to the fic that inspired my fic was the inconvenient and unexpected journey of Millie Fournier, which was a Hobbit girl falls into Middle Earth fic, which is still one of the best stories I've read to date. And it's on fanfiction.net. It's not on Wattpad, but I was like, I actually distinctly remember when I started it because it was close to midnight on New Year's Eve, 2017. And I was like, you know what? I had spent the whole day doing laundry and rereading the Hobbit fic and was like, I want to try this. And I was like, no one's ever done it in the Silmarillion. So I was like, you know what? I live for tackling tropes that people hate. So let's do it. And so I did it, and it was crazy because it's a crazy trope. There's so much you have to take into account. And that's what I do with pretty much all my fanfics. Like my Band of Brothers series, which is what I've been working on for the past 3 months. And it's just reached 250,000 words like 2 days ago. Yeah, it was Listen, I've had a lot of time on quarantine, okay?
She likes big books and she cannot lie.
I have two spectrum. I either write less than 1,000-word one-shots that are character studies or massive original character fics. But with the Band of Brothers one, I was like, you know what people do all the time and everyone hates but also secretly loves? Girl joins Easy Company. So I was like, let me try inserting a girl into the paratroopers, which in 1940s America, which is a whole other thing. But I have been absolutely blown away.
Oh, that's a mess. I love it.
It's okay. I'm not one to like harp on Palindial's here. She's one of my readers. I'm not gonna like harp on the fact that it's good, but like I have been blown away by the amount of support that it has gotten, which I think is testament to the fact that if you research your stuff and you are willing to analyze the original characters in the what ifs, then it can be really, really good. Which is why I hate when people hate on I hate when people hate on tropes, because tropes and cliches, well, cliches inherently are supposed to be bad, but like tropes can, if done well, be incredible no matter how many times they've been done. So yeah, sorry.
Totally.
What
no,
ifs.
I agree. Just to kind of get caught up on chat here, Joel said that's fair. So going back to what we talked about, you know, person from another writing it in another from another language into English as a way to appeal to English readers. I do think that as a community, as a whole, we should be encouraging them and very tactfully being like, hey, here's how you can improve, giving them tools. But yeah, just saying that like, oh, you know, this is unreadable isn't helpful. And again, fandom, there is toxicity in every fandom out there. It doesn't matter what fandom it is. The majority of people are wonderful, wonderful people, and we join together and band together because we enjoy that fandom so much. But there is those, you know, fringe minorities who will just find anything to gripe about. And then let's see, like how half trouble is basically all of my series Bible. It is important, and honestly, people do not take that into account.
No, I have an entire the bottom of my doc for my Google Doc for
Do it.
Palindial. The bottom of my Google Doc for my current fic is like 17 to 20 research links that I can go back to, including like travel time and German curse words, because it's in the military and it's 19.
Oh yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, so I have like German, French curse words, and then I have she's bilingual. I'm not okay, but I could go on a tangent. But I have a million things because people don't realize how many small things you have to research, which is what makes a fanfic worth reading to me. If I'm reading a fanfic and there are things that I can point to and be like, that's just not accurate. I only have so much suspension of disbelief that I'm willing to put into stories. So.
Yeah. And Don brought up, started a fan fiction story on the Blue Wizards of the East from Lord of the Rings. I've always wondered what they would have been like. And actually, I've read a fantastic story by Monster Cupcake, also known as Maddie and Sprinkles, her split personality, who is even worse off than I am. In terms of brutally and horrifically maiming characters, even if it's just their souls. It's an absolutely fantastic take on those wizards. But yeah, it's exactly like that. You know, it's that what if, you know, and if you start with the what if, it can lead to, you know, a lot of interesting things. You know, Joel has, you know, is that canon or your fanfic? I know them. I only know of them, not really their story, just that they're unnamed. That is correct. They are unnamed, other than just like the Blue Wizards. There is stuff out there that does talk about their names, like old notes from Tolkien, I believe. But this is something that I think is really good to bring up because when you are writing fan fiction, if you want to do it well, and Silz, you've already touched on this a couple of times, is that you want to do the best job that you can to reach the audience. So, like, you know, as a Lord of the Rings fan myself, when I sat down, I had an idea of like, how did Gollum become the villain that we see him to be in the trilogy? Like, what led him to that? And that question sparked what became the Tales of the Fourth Age series that I'm writing. And it starts off with like a deeper, darker, more sadder, more depressing backstory for Smeagol. And I made it sound like canon. I did my research. I mean, I looked at the freaking hobbits' migratory patterns from when they were first came into existence. This is the level of nerd that I went to get this, because I wanted people to turn it into headcanon. Like
Fanon. That's headcanon that becomes part of the canon of fan fiction.
Yeah. And when they read that, it's Smeagol's parents. It's why the ring was precious to him, and it had nothing to do with the fact that it was actually the One Ring. And like where Smeagol gets some of his songs and stuff. Like, I've put that all in to this. And so when you read it, it makes sense for why Smeagol became what he became. And that was part of like my testing out the angst factor and be like, oh, you have a heart. Let me just, just rip it right out of him. Let's see. Get that cut up. Yep. Came with Gandalf, left for the East, never seen or heard from again. Oh, wait, there it is. Tolkien
didn't have a series Bible. He's all over the place. So
there were so many inconsistencies with Tolkien.
Many inconsistencies.
Changed it.
Which is
like
that's what I love about it is, and that's what makes writing Tolkien fan fiction so fun, because I don't even want to go into the Hobbit movies, but I, for my Silmarillion trilogy, went into it like, let's approach it as Gil-galad being Fingon's son, whereas in all my other canon of Tolkien stuff I write, I always have it belonging to the line of Orodreth, which Tolkien never he did, but then his son, like when he was compiling things, was like, no, it works better in the story if you do it this way. So Tolkien has so many different interpretations of everything that with fan fiction you can just pick one and go for it. So that's what I like. It's all open.
Yeah. Now, Corvus, if I remember correctly, you do Marvel fanfic, correct? Or you've done it?
No, not yet, but I want to. Okay.
So what are some of the things like that if you've read some of the fan fiction for Marvel, because between Silz and I, there's like 150% of Tolkien nerd here.
I also wrote Marvel fan fiction though, so I'm all the fan.
You were the one who wrote the.
Oh, you were right. You were reading Mirror, right?
The Mirror.
Yeah, Mirror. That was.
Yeah, I loved it. I adored it.
I'm sorry. I will restart it. I promise.
That's the Marvel fan fiction I've read. It's Mirror. Yeah, thank you.
It was pretty good. Thanks.
So, what are some things?
So, Still's Mirror fan fiction is the best.
Thank you. It's not, but thank you.
So, when it comes to fan fiction and figuring out, like, okay, we know that it can make you a better author if you are actually going into it as a way to test new things. Because I think really that's what makes fan fiction so great to start off with, is that it allows you, you don't have to do the world building, you don't have to come up with characters, you just have to know enough and have done just enough research to know how the characters could react, but you can throw a completely new situation at them, and it allows you to test different things on your unsuspecting audience. That's what I did when I started writing fan fiction again. When I first joined Wattpad, I was like, okay, I'm not the author I need to be to write the story that I want to write yet. And there are concepts that I have in my head that I want to see if they will translate well. And so I took original characters, and then I took the characters that I was extremely familiar with, and I threw them in, and then just utter chaos ensued, and people just started dropping like flies. I mean, just hardcore, just
murder.
Yeah, it was like, it was so much angst. I've written a lot of angst, but like, you need some payoff, man. So finish your series.
I know. Yeah, it does have a good payoff. I will say that. And that's probably about as far as it's going to get for the foreseeable future. It's like, it's going to be great.
It's been me for the last 3 years.
Yeah, it'll be fine. You know, I'm just going to pull a Martin. It may or may not end before my time on Earth is done. So Joel says, I just mean all his notes all in one place, because like his personal notes, my ideas for my writing has changed over the years, and I've been writing this world for 10 plus years. I feel that.
I felt that
so much.
For Tolkien, at least, the histories of Middle Earth that Christopher Tolkien published, it's a 12-volume set. That's all of Tolkien's notes and commentary. They're incredible. So if you want Tolkien, go look at those.
Yeah. To answer Don's question, there's 3 main places that people post fan fiction. It's Wattpad, fanfiction.net, and then Archive of Our Own. I haven't done Archive. I've worked with a client who was actually doing like a Frozen Moana crossover in
Sounds
college.
great.
Can I, since I think I'm of you three, of us four, I'm the only one who's on all 3 sites, right? Like,
I've touched AO3 like once, so
my thing, AO3 to me is, they're all good for different things. AO3 is the best when it comes to quality content. And that's because to be a writer there, you have to have an invite. Now that doesn't necessarily mean like you can't request an invite and they'll send you one, but it means you got to take that extra step and accept it and then start writing. There's also a lot more weird, kinky, like bizarre fics on AO3 though. And then because AO3 accepts explicit and mature content as opposed to as opposed to Wattpad. So like Wattpad,
AO3 makes Wattpad look like a playground.
Yeah. The thing about AO3 is has incredible filtering and tagging systems. So if you don't want to see it, you don't have to. That's why I love it.
Wattpad does not have that.
No. Wattpad is designed as a social media platform. AO3 is designed as a writing platform. So that's how I differentiate. You don't have to worry about making covers. You tag. It's incredible. I will forever. I actually just donated $50 to the Transformative Works Project, which is the governing body of the archive, because they do legal stuff promoting transformative works like fan art and fan fiction. So I will always, fanfiction.net's great too because it's the most readers, because it's the most common, but that's why I post to all 3, because they all have different positives. Sorry, that was a really long explanation.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I didn't know about the tagging system. I haven't used AO3. I've like I said, I only edited someone's fan fiction that they had posted there. I have not used it myself. I like Wattpad because I can actually make a cover, I can make a design, do those kinds of things. Fanfiction.net feels like I'm like in the DOS operating system. Like, it's just
sorry, yeah, that's very, very accurate. Fanfiction.net, I am becoming less and less of a fan, especially because most stuff that's on FFN will be on AO3 or Wattpad. And so if I see that a fic is available on AO3, I will go read it on AO3, especially because, it's AO3 because it's A and then O to the third power. So AO3 is off, of our own. So that's why it's referred to as AO3. But it's just the quality content. I mean, the ability to not only like refine searches, but search for specific pairings or for specific like additional tagging or characters. It's incredible. And it also, once you're a member, you're able to edit how the site looks to avoid that terrible fanfiction.net appearance. So like mine is really aesthetically pleasing. So I really prefer to read on AO3.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just gonna say, because I stopped Wattpad probably a year ago. I never touched AO3 because I could never figure out how the tagging system worked. I didn't even realize there was a tagging system. I thought it was like Wattpad, so I was just avoiding that at all costs because I typed one thing and regretted every second. So I moved to fanfic because honestly, it looks weird, but it's also got a lot better stuff on it than Wattpad. So
Wattpad's a disaster. Sorry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm not in disagreement there.
I need to find out. Yeah, I need to find out where to my original stuff so I can post it with dignity.
Right?
Yeah, Wattpad is really nice as a social media platform. I've never used LitNet. I don't know what that is. I'll Google it. But Wattpad is really great. That's how I've built a writing platform. I mean, and like a reader base, because like now, I just hit the 800 follower mark, which since I've only been trying for like 2 years is pretty good, especially because I don't do like follow for follow. So I basically just follow people and who interact with me, because I don't see a point in really following people who aren't going to interact with me. But it allows you to interact with your readers in a way that the other two don't, which is really nice. And the inline comments that Wattpad, the Wattpad allows is really nice too. I think that's why I think it's like the best writer social media site. But it's far from the best writing, like uploading platform. So that's why I use all three, because there's pros and cons to all of them. So
yeah.
And now I use Tumblr. I was not on Tumblr. Tumblr's I have come to love Tumblr and hate Tumblr.
That is a new can of worms that I'd rather not open.
I held off on Tumblr for the past 7 years. People started using Tumblr in early high school, and I was like, no, I'll get too obsessed. I did. When I finally dove in about 2 months ago, and started, it's incredible, but it's really hard to post long-term fics on Tumblr. Tumblr is really great for one-shots. But writing long-term ones is very, very difficult, I think, on Tumblr. I'm trying to figure out what LitNet is. Let me see.
Okay.
Joel's comment is going to come popping up here in just a second. But he said, LitNet, simply put, there it is you can serialize the chapters of your novel and have people subscribe to support your work, much like how Webtoon works, while also giving them the option to act as beta readers.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, interesting.
But so they accept fanfiction as well? Let me see. That's really cool. I might look into that. Because I need, I need a fifth site to upload to.
I only have Wattpad at the moment.
I am only able to maintain my current level of updating because I'm in quarantine, because I literally wake up, spend an hour uploading to various places, because some of you, like Corvus, when you were reading Mirror, I update on Wattpad as I write. So if I write 3 chapters in a day, 3 chapters in a day go up, because I don't have the time and patience to wait and to upload on a schedule. For fanfiction.net, I've started waiting and doing one a day. So I get up. I forgot my update today. I need to do that. But I try to update at 10 a.m. every day, because it takes 24 hours for the system to let you bump to the top of the page. And so once it's hit the 24-hour mark, I upload so that it's the same time the next day. Screwed that up. But Yeah, it's just really tough because I end up spending so long updating some places, and I feel bad because like people miss chapters sometimes if I upload 3 or 4 in a day, but if I don't do that, then I'm sitting at a computer till 11 a.m. every morning trying to upload, and that's just so I mean, I spent a lot of effort on my fix. I spent money on my fix. I just don't want to spend time. Like, that's the problem. So
Yeah.
Like, I usually update as I write too,
mhm.
for my original works at least. I haven't written many fanfictions. But yeah, like, one time I took a 9-month hiatus on Jaguar, and that was kind of irritating.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I publish as I write too. Problem is I write maybe 1 chapter a year, so
I get in spurts. That's my problem. I've been writing so much
Yeah.
during this quarantine because, like, 2 of you at least know, I had the virus, so I've been in my upstairs for 2 weeks now, and so I've literally just been sitting. I mean, I can walk like 15 feet to the other side of the room, but I've written like it was actually pretty crazy. When it started, I invited like 10 or 15 of my writing buddies to do Corona Rimo. So we have we have an Excel sheet that, okay, I'm very proud of this Excel sheet because I took a lot of time on it, but it's just like all the way through the end of July dates. And then you can just upload your word count, and then there's like a side that has like everyone's word count. And then for Camp Nano, which was April, I have a separate algorithm that puts out your April count, and I hit 50,000 in 15 days, and then I hit 100,000 in 30. I was like, this is a problem. Spending too much time on this. But
it's not a problem, it's just a problem.
Yeah, it would be a problem if I still had a job, but I don't have a job anymore, so it's okay. I can dedicate it to fanfiction.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I've seen is when it comes to fanfiction is that they all do the same exact thing. Vampire boyfriends with alpha personalities, or werewolf boyfriends.
Alpha, beta, omega. Oh my god.
Oh yeah. I mean, it literally looks like a copy and paste. And you saw, I remember seeing like an excess of these when Twilight, for whatever reason, became a thing. It should have died a long time ago and been buried and then decapitated and never resurrected.
It should have died before it was published.
Yeah, it should.
Don't forget burned.
Yes, I agree.
It needed to be purified.
No.
Yeah,
the burn booklet.
So the interesting part about fan fiction is that people tend to follow the same exact trope that they read, and they don't go beyond that. They're just like, oh, I like that idea, I'm going to do the same thing. So what for those who enjoy fan fiction and writing fan fiction, because we all have those things that we love, what's some advice that you guys could give them that you see done poorly that could be done differently?
Can I start? I'll be quick, I promise. Okay. Okay. I say that now. My biggest pet peeve of any trope is when someone makes a change to canon and does not give an explanation for why that would fit in canon. So what I mean by this is like, I've got the two fandoms that I've done this the most with. My Band of Brothers one. Why is there a girl in the US military? Like, you can't just be like, there's a girl there. And I'm gonna be like, okay, but why? And so many people take...
Because she's a strong, independent white woman, Julianne.
Yeah, in 1940s America. So, okay. So, like...
She's a time traveler, literal as you know.
Oh, sorry. There's actually a really cool Band of Brothers fanfic that has time travel, and it's actually really good, and it's on Wattpad. I can't remember what it's called, but it's really good. Cosmic maybe? Anyways, but that was cool. I was like, that's a cool take on a trope. Like, that's totally different. For me, I was like, well, if there's gonna be a woman in easy company, number one, okay, you just have to accept that, but you also need an explanation. So like mine was going to be like, okay, what if she was, I'm not going to go into her backstory because it's way too long, but basically she's part of the French resistance. And so she acts as a liaison and an intelligence officer with easy company. And so part of it had to do with,
Cool.
you know, it's a pretty cool, she's probably my favorite character I've ever written. But one thing I did was like, well, how did she get involved with the French resistance? Well, I ended up doing research into, I did a lot of research into female resistance fighters in all the different occupied countries in World War II. And there people that we don't hear about. I mean, girls who were 14, 15, who were luring Nazis out into the woods to have them, to assassinate them. It's pretty crazy stuff. But my thing was,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I have a whole list of the historical women who have inspired my character. But I found General Charles de Gaulle had a niece who was actively involved in the French resistance, who happened to be in the same city and university as the character I was drafting. So I was like, there you go. That's her in. And so once you have an explanation, awesome. People don't have to suspend disbelief. They can look at it and say, okay, here's the explanation. Let's hit the ground running with the story. So like, that's what my thing is like, if you're going to do something that seems either out of character or changes canon, you have to have an in-universe explanation for why that is occurring, or else I'm not going to read it. So yeah, that's my thing.
Okay.
Do your research.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go.
I didn't say that.
Oh, I thought you did. Anyway, so personally, like, I've read a very wide range, especially recently because, well, instead of doing homework in quarantine, I do, reading. But so like I've picked up, a lot of just wide ranged, literally anything from a terrible crossover to he's my dad, and he's not. So I'd say probably like my biggest thing is if something like if something takes a character, we talked about this earlier, I know, but like if something takes a character, right, and does something with them, what I want to see is not from the character's point of view. I want to see from everyone else's point of view.
Yes.
Because all right, so there was warning. All right, so I've been reading My Hero stuff recently, My Hero Academia, mostly because well, I just watched the series and now I'm not satisfied with how everything's going. So I was reading, and I found that like these they turn like Deku, the main character, this kid who was bullied his whole life, right? They turn him into a villain, and all of the fics, they take it from his point of view and how, oh no, I'm poor me, this was awful. And it wasn't until someone I couldn't read them. They were awful. I couldn't get behind this idea of this cinnamon roll who is literally the epitome of innocence turning into a villain. And it wasn't until I found this one where they took it from his tormentor's point of view. Now his tormentor always wanted to be a hero, but like he's a bully, and he didn't. And the way they did it is they took like he didn't realize that it was this huge issue and what it was going to do. He was just like, well, he was the kid that I made fun of my whole life, threw him against lockers and whatnot. And so like seeing it from his point of view, what this change of character did was way more interesting than seeing this copy paste I'm a bad guy now version of the character. And like I like character studies, but give me the character studies of everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Can I make a quick comment on that? Okay, one of the things that the big issue I also have with fan fiction that's related to that is people who write traumatic scenes not necessarily explicitly in like a sexual way, but like intimately, and then like expect that to be the thing that it hurts the most. I will, like, if I'm gonna write something like a traumatic experience, to me the best way to approach that is the next chapter, write it from somebody else watching them and see like what are they picking up on the effects of this person who has just gone through this thing, because that's so much more interesting than like, oh, like, yes, like definitely need to have some internal like oh, I'm upset, and obviously if it's trauma it's much more in depth, but much more interesting is how is the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the parent reacting to this thing that has happened, and noticing changes in the character that then you don't have to write those changes from that character's perspective. You can write it from a person who's watching it happen. So one thing I ended up doing a lot in the Band of Brothers, the second one of the duology, was doing chapters from perspectives outside of basically the main character. I mean, in the Band of Brothers series, they liberate Calfring 4 concentration camp. And number one, that's already traumatic enough. I can't, rewatching that episode it hurts. But I also had designed my character as a German Jew on purpose. And because I wanted, when I basically told myself I was going to write this series, I said, I'm not pulling any punches when it comes to the Holocaust. Like, this is going to get highlighted. But that meant by the time we got to Calfring 4 and we were doing those chapters and she's experiencing firsthand, like, what's happened to her people, it was too much angst. Like, there is a point at which you can't just be writing angst. And so I did several chapters from other people's perspectives, looking at Alice and how she's reacting. And that was really refreshing to me. And I when I was writing it, I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I wish more people would do that. You have a lot more freedom in fan fiction to, change perspectives and change writing styles. And as long as
right.
So it's then a published book. And so, it's almost like poetry. Like you can like sort of use your own style to a certain extent. And that really helped for me. Doing character study of watching someone else go through something was really cool.
Oh, I wanted to bring up the poor guy in the chat who thought I was dissing season 4. I love season 4. Don't get me wrong. I love the series as a whole. I'm reading the manga and I'm a little further ahead, and things just went completely awry. In a good way, but I'm still upset about it. So don't get me wrong, it's good. I'm upset.
Also, Palindiel, with your hashtag, we will get there someday. Ice skating Ron will happen, but not yet.
Corvus, how about you? What are some of the things that you see done poorly that could be done better?
Me? Who, me?
Yeah, you.
I'm gonna review. Okay, that's a good question. Because I don't really read much fan fiction other than Silz's, and hers is top notch.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Carter, you have not been initiated as you should have been.
Yeah, we're talking to a newbie in the
Indeed.
fan. I love it. What do you want to see then? Like,
Indeed.
what would you like to see?
Like, I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. Sorry. Like, I like how you did Hawkeye and your mirror thing. That seems very him, Seems very accurate to the character.
Yeah, so what he's referring to is my attempt to meld comic Clint Barton with Jeremy Renner's Clint Barton in a way that's believable to the MCU. That has been so fun because
You did it really well.
Thank you. Clint in the comics is very different. He's a walking, talking human disaster. He's like me, but he and the Hawkeye in the MCU is so different. I love both Hawkeyes. I love Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye. Don't get me wrong, but they're very, very different characters. And I wanted to. The point of the story that I wrote was to highlight the PTSD that Clint must have felt after Loki's control. That is literally never touched on. Like you've been mind controlled for an entire movie and we're just going to say, hey, you're fine. Like, no, that's not how it works. That's another pet peeve.
Especially when it was something like it wasn't, this casual mind control. I mean, he was made to kill friends of his.
Exactly. And so I figured, well, what a perfect way to open up for the walking, talking human disaster version of Hawkeye into Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye, him coping with this PTSD. And in doing so, I need an original character because that's what I do with my life. So I didn't want it to be a romantic interest. And so I actually had done, when I was in high school, the first fanfic I wrote was 350,000 words of Marvel fan fiction, which is crap. Like, please do not, if anybody's watching this, please don't go read it. It's only on FFN now, and it's only up there because so many people read it, but people read it because it's like teenage drama, which people like, that age group. So, but anyways, my choice was to use I liked some of the character development I had created in it, so I put it into this story. So yeah, it's got like Clint on one hand, who's like terrified of magic now and PTSD and basically trying to make his way as an agent, and on the other side, a girl who's like chaotic neutral magic, and her basically decided to join the Avengers because, hey, there's health and dental insurance and I get paid. So
me too.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays, like, we could use some more dental insurance in our lives.
Amen. So that one was another one where I basically wanted to take trauma and flip it. I like that, taking trauma, flipping it on its head and looking at how would it actually react.
So in terms of fan fiction that I want to read, stuff like that is exactly what I want to read. Where I have the characters who are accurate to the original story, and they spin it in a good way. It's a good story, stuff like that.
Also, you need more swords.
I read this. I will dive into some AUs. Yeah, there are some good ones. Good AUs are hard to come by, but incredible if you can find them, because you get to see how a character is accurate to a completely different time and space, and that's amazing when you find it. So that's
yes.
Yeah.
So if you guys have anything to recommend, just send my way, please.
Yeah, I'll send you.
Oh, I've got lots. This past a week and a half has been chock full.
Yeah. This is my problem. People ask me for recommendations. Like Pelindiel, who's in the chat, she has a good Marvel one. But like I don't read fan fiction anymore because I'm so picky. I read some Band of Brothers right now. There's one that was huge, 450,000 words. I got through it in 4 days. Didn't sleep. And
me
That's
too.
amazing. Wow.
Yeah,
The really long ones are so good when they're done right.
Yeah, and this one was incredible. And again, it was taking a trope and flipping it on it and doing it realistically. I think that's another huge one, is taking a trope and doing it realistically, because so many people, especially with things like girl falls into Middle Earth or introducing a girl into the paratroopers, they do it. I guess it goes back to me saying I need an explanation, but like they do it in a way that's just, you're just like, what? Like, that's how I can only suspend disbelief. I can only suspend disbelief so far. And even with fan fiction, where I'm much more lenient, like I need to have an explanation.
Oh yeah, no. My favorite trope that people screw up is the friends to lovers, but not even like just the friends to lovers, but like the enemies to friends, or even that. It's always done wrong, and I want to fight someone because when it's done right, I love it.
Yes, I agree. And so this Joel brings up a good question. So is it the idea of alternate universe or an alternate timeline? The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
It depends on what you want to do with it. Like, I know that alternate universes are fun. So like I said, like I did an edit for someone who was doing a Moana Frozen crossover in a modern college setting. And it was actually very well done. It was a very interesting read. It needed a lot of work, but all of the story components were there, and it was really, really cool. alternate timeline is actually where I've ended up with my Lord of the Rings fan fiction, the Tales of the Fourth Age, because I've done a lot of the research. I know the story was inspired by Tolkien's unfinished sequel to Lord of the Rings, A New Shadow. I was
don't have it.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's all I want. That's all I want.
But it was supposed to take place like 100 years after Eldarion had been ruling after his father had passed, which I also did an angsty one shot between Aragorn and Eldarion.
That was good.
And the timeline, because I've thrown my own original character into the mix, and what he doesn't realize by tampering with pretty much everything is that he's actually shortened the timeline. So things that were supposed to happen hundreds of years into the future are now happening at an accelerated rate. And he's just kind of starting to figure out what he's done, which is why book 5 is just like him being an angsty muffin the entire way through, because he's like, I've done it all wrong. It's my fault. And like,
angsty muffins are the best, though.
Oh, it's so much. And there's angsty elf muffins as well. There's
one of my tags on Tumblr for real quick, for a post was elves above everything else, and that's what I feel like elves above everything. I will always take elves.
Yeah. Speaking of, what is?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Love that.
It's super cool. I want to read that. Yeah. I just approach alternate timeline as you threw something in and it diverges. Alternate universe is you're completely different, like in a completely different place. So like technically, even though I usually have like nicknames for all my original character universes. So like the the Clixenverse is my Band of Brothers one, because my readers came up with a ship name for the romantic pairing, and that became like the thing. I live for both though. They're so good. Yeah, angsty muffins.
Yeah, I commented on it. I was like, my YA audience has rubbed up on me. No, I'm throwing around terms like small beans and cinnamon rolls and angsty muffins.
Small beans.
People just look at me like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah, anyone in like normal universe is just confused from 90% of what I say. So
well, this is why I want to normalize fandom culture, because there's so many cool like things that fandom has embraced that people should just embrace, and it's the complete lack of apathy. Like I could write a paper on this.
I'm right there with you. Yeah. Always down to write a paper.
I want to dive into one of the things that I've seen so often that is done so poorly, and it just drives me nuts. And this is, thank you so much, Dawn. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Thing that has driven me crazy time and time again with fan fiction, and even with some of people's original works that can barely pass for original works, is the overly villainous villain who revels in villainy.
Oh my god! I have so much to say about this.
Because I'm bad. I was born bad. It's like,
oh yes, that's your thing.
It
really
now
hurts me.
Yes, absolutely. I'm right there with
you. So often, especially with younger authors. And it's okay because I can give them a pass because I understand that there are some nuances that they have not experienced yet in reading good villains. Because I don't take good villains from movies most of the time. The two that I would actually take from movies that readily come to mind would be Thanos and Darth Vader.
Yep.
I would also throw in Darth Maul.
Those are the two I was thinking of.
Complicated.
And you haven't seen Clone Wars.
I haven't. But I've watched the duel between him and Obi-Wan on Tatooine. I did see that. And so the overly villainous villains who revel in villainy is the most frustrating thing, because they are beyond our ability to suspend disbelief,
Mhm.
because we realize that there are more shades of gray in a villain than just them being bad. Look at
Mhm.
Sauron, right? Sauron has many different facets to him. They're not explored in the Lord of the Rings, but they
Mhm.
are explored in the Silmarillion. And
Mhm.
so we have some backstory for them. Loki, we understand Loki's backstory, and he's a villain that kind of blurs the line a little bit.
Mhm.
Thanos is a villain that I appreciated what they did with him,
Mhm.
because they made him believe so much in his own ideology that his conviction in that was so strong
Mhm.
that there is a very small part of people who can relate to that or respect that, and they hate it. They hate that they respect that little bit of Thanos because he's a psychotic murderer.
Perfectly
That's
balanced, as
what I
all
love
things should
about him,
be.
is because he was complicated. People in fan fiction that are writing fan fiction, and again, even in some of their original works, they don't create complicated villains. And that doesn't mean that you have to have this huge, elaborate backstory for a villain, but you at least have to give them layers in their personality. Even if their
Trauma doesn't
backstory
equal
is-
excuses.
Yeah.
Ah,
I agree with that.
yeah. You don't want to be like, well, he's bad because my mom died.
I read one like that and I hate it.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
Okay,
Like,
can I?
no choice.
Can I say something on our original works real quick? Okay.
Yeah,
So
go for
like, I have this villain in my book. Okay, so I have this villain in my book, Samurai, right?
it.
Right?
Right.
His name is Lucas Ralph, and he killed Elsie. She was going to die. He wanted to suffer, so he stabbed her in the heart.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I like that character. And even though he killed his mother, he's a mercenary, a brutal mercenary. He has a family. He has a wife and a 7-year-old daughter who he loves. He does not want that kid to grow up like him at all.
Mhm.
He can be so much better than he is, and I love that character.
Yeah. There are so many ways to take a character. Number one, don't make it mental illness. That is my biggest thing. Like, don't take a mental health issue and say, well, this is why they're a villain. Like, no, sorry, back up. But like, people can get to the point, like, I feel bad going back to my character. Like, I feel like, but I just know how I sort of developed this. But Alice, this is gonna spoil if anyone who reads my stuff is watching it. My big thing with her is she's the protagonist, but towards the end, like once the war is over, like we just reached VE Day and technically the war in Europe's over, but she's not done making the Nazis pay after Kaufring 4. Like, she's like, we're not done with this, which is very different from her personality. Like, pre-war, it's complicated. It's close to her personality when the book starts, but you see some like pre-war stuff. Yeah. Sorry, Philly. Some people know about this who I have like as creative consultants, as I refer to them. But it's interesting because you can do that with protagonists. Like, you can do the opposite with antagonists and give them something that like is some like the child that they want to protect. Like, that's so much. It gives, number one, it gives them a reason, a twisted reason for villainy, but it gives them a reason that you can believe. Like, for Alice, she's having to come to terms with all this, the just horror that she has seen, and the way she's coping with it is turning to basically war crimes. It's complicated. It's not really, it's complicated, but you can do the same thing with villains, just in the opposite direction.
So, all right. So, I have a lot I could say about villains, because villains are probably my favorite aspect about fiction.
Yeah.
Always, 100%.
Yes.
But like having a villain that you can see the point of view of is way scarier and way easier to hate than one that just loves villainy. Also, I've actually written characters. I've written characters who are the overly villainous, lover of villainy. But here's the thing: it was a trick that I picked up from, I don't even remember what it was, but I remember loving the villain, and it was he was sadistic and cruel. But the reason he was sadistic and cruel, like, it wasn't like this huge tragic backstory thing. It was literally because it wasn't like it was almost like a twist on the, well, you're below me, so therefore I don't care. It was almost like a twist on that. It's really difficult to explain because it's one of those things where you have to like experience it to understand. And it was like, you can have the overly villainous, over the top, I love villainy kind of guy with, no reason for it. Well, I mean, there's a reason, but like, you can have that, but you also can't make it feel like, that guy from The Perils of Penelope Pitstop who's there for, the mustache twirling and the damsel tied to track or train tracks. So I'm just, villains are my thing, and I can't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that,
Yes.
Aside from villains, there's the obvious, like, hashtag insta love between characters. Also, there's a gag reflex that I have that is triggered when I see it, and it happens more often in romance fics specifically than it does some of the other ones that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that I've tried to help students and different clients of mine with this is that really, like, if you're going to write fan fiction, just take 5 minutes and like observe the world around you. And I don't say that to be sarcastic. It's to actually get you to actually look outside of your personal bubble and at how people actually interact. Is instant love, you see your true love, is it a thing? Yes, I do believe that people can see each other across the room, there be a connection, and then that connection is built upon. But it is still, it takes work. It's still taking work to establish it. That's one of the reasons why I actually found it hilarious and appreciated Frozen's take on Anna and Hans, where she's like, we're going to get married. And Elsa's like, what?
Now?
Like, people don't do that. And I liked how they kind of poked fun at what the usual trope is. That is something that people miss so often when they're writing romance, is that you need to build relationship with the characters. If you meet someone, you're not instantaneously friends for life. You can have that moment where you go, I feel like we're going to be friends. And then over time, that is built and reinforced. It's the same with love. Like, I'm working with somebody who they're doing an original work, and she's read a lot of romance novels, and it came through in some of the descriptions and stuff. And so I would ask, why is this being called attention to? And she was like, well, it's for this reason. I'm like, okay, so you're on the border of that insta love that isn't believable for people. It is in cartoons because it's a different expectation. We expect that in cartoons, the little heart emojis, all that kind of stuff. It's different in a book. It takes a lot of work. If you have that instant attraction, make them work it out throughout the book. But that is one of the hardest things that I have seen in fan fiction, or people will pair up two characters that you're just like, no.
Why are you a thing? Please no. Yeah.
Especially the abusive ones that like, there's no way it could be a healthy relationship.
I'm guilty of that, actually, in my original work. I'm guilty of the abusive relationship.
Yeah, but as long as you don't try to romanticize it, and it's not like here's my romance pairing, but like ignore the beating up that's happening in the back alley there.
Right. It all comes back to my point that there has to be an explanation. That's my thing. Like, if you can explain to me in a way that makes sense why something is occurring, I will believe it. And it's across the board for everything. One of the things related to the romance thing that bothers me is that there's no normalization, well, very little normalization of male-female friendships, platonic friendships. Not just in fan fiction, across the board. Some of my best friends are guys, and I adore them, and I will say I love them because they are like extremely deep friends of mine. There is nothing romantic involved with it whatsoever. On either side. One of them's married now. So like it's too, yeah. So like you never see that in fan fiction. Like or not never, but rarely. Especially if it's because I feel like in fan fiction it's so heavily romance based these days. Like it's become such a shipping thing. And I like a good romance, but like I want to see realistically people getting along the way they would get along, which is like you can have intimacy with someone in a way that's not physical. Like you can have a deep amount of trust in someone and vulnerability, and there be nothing romantic about it at all. And you don't see that in fan fiction. I mean, you don't see it in fiction much either. You just don't see it. Which is going back to the point of like, take a look around what's going on. Like there's more than romance and familial love. Like there's more than the eros and the familial. Like there's deep platonic love that I think is not capitalized on enough.
Absolutely. Oh,
that's mine.
Yes,
I've been thinking about it recently. I think what's also not capitalized on enough is the fact that these are teenagers. Or at least most of the time. It's always the YA that you get this kind of crap with. But like, because they're teenagers, what I want to see is like not knowing whether or not it's romantic feelings. Like I want a romance, like you to assume it's an insta love situation because you read your fanfics. So I want a fanfic or even an original piece where the main character thinks they're in love with this other person, and then it takes maybe a half a book, the entire book, to realize, no, it was platonic love. And I want to see that, but I never get to see that, and that upsets me.
Yeah, I also did that a little bit with my Band Brothers one. That's been really fun. So
I agree. It is one of those things. Or sorry, go ahead, Corvus.
Okay, so in my book, J Jaguar, so it's a character named Fade, and then there's a protagonist, J Jaguar. And so originally they were enemies, and they've been enemies for about 2 years now. But they were at some point they were also like admire each other deep down. They respect each other, right? And so at one point he finds her and she's homeless, and he takes her into his house to care for her a bit. And so later in the book, there's a moment where he's like, "Oh, she's like a sister to me now." It's weird because we were enemies for all the time, but she has different kind of thing for him. I think she might be romantically to him in some way. So yeah, that's convoluted.
Well, that's another thing is like with familial love.
No, he does.
Oh no!
Yeah, that's what Samurai is based around.
Yeah, the fact that in familial love, like sibling rivalry is a thing. Like you can, like, if you have if you have a relationship that's even, at least what I'm writing it, that's even if it's not blood familial, but there's one particular, I'll call it relationship. It's not romantic, but like a pairing of characters in one of my stories where they basically become siblings. Like they basically are siblings by the end. And they it's weird because like they still flirt as like an ongoing joke. Like, oh, remember when we first met and like you wouldn't stop flirting with me, and like it keeps going. And even though they know there's absolutely nothing involved, I mean, to the point where it's a girl and a guy, and the guy is taking bets on how long it takes for her to end up with this other guy. Like, so there's nothing romantic going on, but you still like, there's so much more to as like a sibling relationship than I think people explore too, and it's never looked at in fan fiction. Fan fiction is so exclusively romance these days, which bothers me.
And if you look at and we addressed the point that, you know, the majority of people who are writing fanfic are angsty teenagers.
I was one. I'm not dissing it. Like, let them do their thing. You know?
Oh yeah. No, I'm right there with you.
Because that's where we all start off.
Yeah.
You know, we start off writing a lot of most of the time doing some sort of fan fiction because we're either reading it, we love more about the characters. You know, to Archie's point, you know, unhappy about the way something happened, so looking for a fanfic that kind of explain it. You know, we all do that, and we all started to some degree doing fan fiction first because it was most familiar to us as a story concept, because we knew the characters, we knew the world. It was much less intimidating than starting off on our own stories at the time. We grew into that, but you know, you have so many different factors working against teenagers now. I mean, and this goes beyond the scope of writing to, you know, the peer pressure, the high school, you know, what they learned growing up, the familial backgrounds. I mean, you have all this kind of stuff. And this writing is where they pour out a lot of their angst, where they pour out a lot of their fantasies, where they want to meet somebody and have it be instant love and there be happily ever after. And, or, you know, in some cases they've been in abusive relationships, and writing it is it's in some ways justifying the relationship to themselves because their characters are experiencing it. I mean, there's a wide range of things that influence a young adult's writing style and the stories in which they tell. And while we can, you know, poke fun at ourselves and, you know, some of the things that we've done, and there's obviously like horribly written fan fiction out there by people of all ages, it doesn't matter. On the surface we can look at that, but like I try to never judge like their lifestyles that may come through in the story, because that's not for me to judge. Because I mean, most of the stuff that I've put in to my fan fictions, a lot of the trauma and stuff stems from my own background traumas. And I ask the questions, you know, in the fan fiction and in my the novel that I'm working on now, you know, like, why does God allow bad things to happen to people that follow him? I don't have an answer that anybody else is going to necessarily believe or accept, but I explore that throughout the course of my book from different characters' point of views who have massive amounts of trauma. And it is reflective of my own life. Now, there is a point where I'm like, okay, there is too much angst that can go into something like this, and I don't want to turn it into an angst fest. I want to feel the emotions and sympathize with a character, because I want them to understand that trauma affects a lot of people, and people do things under the influence of trauma that they maybe wouldn't have otherwise done if they hadn't been traumatized. And this goes to kind of what I wanted to touch on with Joel, where
I wanted to respond to that.
and, you know, for example, in the movie Split, I don't remember what the guy's name is, but he suffers from extreme cases of split personality, and because of this, different personalities perform different actions. One of them's a hunter, the beast, later. When it's done, and this kind of goes back to what Julianne was saying, is that it's about research. If you're going to do it, don't be like, well, someone's depressed, therefore they equal a mass murderer, and they're just going to murder thousands of people. That is not, under any circumstances, accurate at all.
Yeah, and can I? Sorry.
Just
go ahead.
Finish up real quick. The you know, like, I have PTSD that I'm working through from a lot of the abuse that I had from childhood. And there were certain things that led me down a road to the point where when I was 18, you know, I was on the edge of my bed ready to take my own life. And that's not something that I would have been, not a place I would have been at had I not experienced those things. But that didn't mean that just because I was suffering from a form of PTSD that I was going to go out and harm other people. And so it is very much that you need to do the research. If you're going to do it, have the research there, at least do that much, and not portray the person as simply one-sided, because there are multiple facets to trauma, to mental illness. I mean, so many different things, and you don't want to glorify it either. You know, glorifying it for people who glorify, you know, body dysmorphia or anorexia, you know, in their books, or abusive relationships. You don't want to do that. We should not, as authors, be glorifying those kinds of things because they are harming people. So,
I 100% what you said. In addition to that, my thing is I write, so similar when I was in high school. I mean, I started writing as a way to deal with my own suicidal thoughts. So the fanfic I mentioned that was the Marvel one, 350,000 words that I've left up is only up because I still get comments from people saying, thank you, this saved my life. And I'm not going to take it down if this is affecting people in that way. That being said, because a lot of the mental health conditions and issues that I was going through came through in the story. But if you're gonna write a character who's a villain with a mental illness or a condition, you have to balance it as showing it's not the normal response. Like violence is not the normal response. So like it's perfectly fine as an explanation, but you need to be able to balance that with saying, look at the other 150,000 people who suffer from this condition didn't lash out. That's the difference. Like there are some great villains who very clearly have mental health issues, but like you've got it. For the sake of people who have the condition, for the sake of the people who don't know about the condition, it's really irresponsible to give them the wrong information. And that goes just as much for fan fiction to me as for, if not more.
I would say more
because of your audience. If you're going to deal with any sort of mental health issue, you've got to do it responsibly. And so like, yeah, I mean, I wrote one story that was it was literally basically therapy for me. That was the OC having the eating disorder that I have, which is never talked about. It's called ARFID, and it's not a body dysmorphia eating disorder, so no one knows about it. And I wrote it as a therapy, and I wrote it as a way to show that you can recover. It's abandoned. I haven't finished it. I will someday. It was more of just like a pet project. But if you're going to do it, like you've got to do your research and write it accurately and not write it as it can't be the reason for the villainy. It can be an explanation. I think there's like a difference between like it kind of explains how they got there, but it's not like the sole reason why someone's going to go become a mass murderer. Like there's a big difference. And so, yeah, and that's hugely important when it comes to writing fan fiction because of the audience that it's being written for. Because it's not the entire time. It's not going to be. I mean, you know, I'm 20, turning 23, so like I'm not a teenager, but like a lot of the people who are going to be reading stuff that's posted online are 15, 16, 17-year-old girls who probably are trying to escape a reality by going into fan fiction, because that's what a lot of it starts as. So yeah, it's a whole can of worms. I could do a whole podcast on how to approach my opinions on how to approach mental illness when it comes to writing, but it's so important in fan fiction. So Joel said, you know, the only villain that I've seen that went from I'm emotionally and physically scarred, so everyone else must feel my pain, to go on killing others was pain from Naruto, or Naruto. I always pronounce
Naruto.
Naruto, right? Is it Naruto? I thought it was Naruto. My Latino
brother from another mother, my little Mexi roll, he would always yell at me all the time for that name. So much.
Well, I think in response to that, that's published fiction that's gone through editing it's not the case in fan fiction. I mean, in fan fiction, as much as I adore the fact that anyone can publish anything, because I think that's so freeing and such a community builder, it also has opened the doors to a lot of very, very problematic things, like really abusive relationships being glorified. Like, you're talking about glorifying these things that really need to be taken carefully. And that's why, like, people yell or get mad when people say there should be trigger warnings. I am 100% in favor of trigger warnings at the beginning of a story, just because, like, at least in fan fiction, like, you're not telling them not to read it. You're just telling them, be aware, like, what the story you're approaching is going to touch on topics that may be troubling. And with fan fiction, that means that they can just keep scrolling, and that's really, really useful for the audience that it's intended for.
Yeah, well, and that's what I did with my Into Depravity fan fiction with Gollum, because I mean, I touch on familial suicide, I touch on depression, I touch on postnatal depression.
Yeah, there's so much.
I touch on some extremely dark subjects, and like, again, that was in part me processing my own sense of trauma. And I put a trigger warning, and I actually marked it as mature, which I did not do in any of the other ones, because I knew that that type of material for somebody could be extremely sensitive. And I wanted to be respectful about that. You know, if you're going to write something like that, and you don't let someone know, then you could potentially be triggering something very harmful in them. This is why, like, when I had mentioned in the comments that I'm actually going to be doing a stream, faith, fantasy, and writing, how God saved me through writing, here in May. And I'm going to be sharing a lot more of my testimony about what writing has done for me, how God has used that for a lot of healing, but also to allow me to process a lot of the trauma that I've gone through in my life. And I know, as someone who has been through that if I read the wrong thing, and even today, I don't edit things with sexually explicit content in it. Specifically, you know, if it's got rape or anything regarding that, because it's happened to me, it is very emotionally disturbing to read. And it just causes panic. Well, not to mention I have a heart condition now, so caffeine is causing the heart to beat faster. Not usually the best. I don't need my heart exploding on a live stream. In general, bad for branding, bad for business. Also,
bad for brand. This is bad for the brand.
Bad for brand. But it's one of those things where it causes a very physical reaction in people. And I don't think that people who have gone through that understand that. For those who have, and they write it and they propagate it, they don't, it's their trauma. And so it's not as sensitive necessarily to them, but someone reading it can be affected by it.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say,
very, very careful in fan fiction when they do that kind of stuff, especially with emotional trauma, sexual trauma, physical abuse. You know, and especially if that abuse is within family or friends, or, you know, the relationships that are being written about, it can be, you can actually get secondhand trauma. And I don't think people understand that. And so you have to be very careful and to be able to tell your story without causing secondhand trauma to somebody else. And people don't take that into account.
Yeah, people don't get that. A lot, well, not everybody doesn't get it, but a lot of people, like, if a story has self-harm in it, I immediately am like, I go into it understanding that that's going to be something that I might have to put to the side, because that's been in my past. And reading it, especially, and this is the kicker, especially if it's well written, because if it's well written, or like if someone has a very imagery filled or detailed style, and they start going into something. This is why when I put trauma in my writing, I almost never show the actual traumatic event. I will show, like, I had a sexual assault in the past of my character, which was I don't do that lightly. I almost never put that in my character, but it was very, very important to her story as a French resistance fighter. But I did not show that. Like, I'm not going to put that, like, people don't need to read that to understand how it affects someone afterwards, you know, like, so there's literally no point in putting a detailed traumatic experience in a story if you can just as effectively show it through the way people see her reacting to a touch or to, you know, things like that. Like, that's, to me, even more powerful. And so trigger warnings are like my best friend, because like the beginning of my Band of Brothers one, I have trigger warnings for like strong language, because they're men in 1940s, the paratroopers, like I wasn't going to pull punches on that one. That's part of canon. So like strong language, like past assault. I have, the Holocaust. I was like, please understand you are reading a World War II historical fiction about a Jewish character during the Holocaust. As long as you put those, I'm not sure, depending on what the chapter is, I don't always put a trigger warning at the beginning of a chapter. If it's something that's very traumatic, like the assault where she has like a brief dialogue-based flashback, I will put trigger warnings, be like, listen, too long, didn't read, this is what happens, skip to the next chapter. But I always put trigger warnings at the beginning of stories, because you have a responsibility as someone who's writing to understand the power that your words have, and especially when your audience is young girls. Like, to me, that's you can't not, like, it's so irresponsible not to put them.
Yeah,
I agree.
Go ahead, Corvus.
I have to go now. So thank you for the discussion, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining, Corvus.
Hope everyone has a good day.
You too.
Yeah, I think that and like, again, like, I understand why a lot of people are writing the trauma in fan fiction, because it is a way for them to process their own and come to terms with their own form of trauma. What ends up happening is that they use that for shock value.
Yes. That's the issue.
This is where you can improve as an author, is to where you learn to handle it in a very mature way, like you were talking about, where you don't show it, you show the ramifications,
the effects. Yes. Sorry, that's how I approach all of my trauma, because I actually see it a lot in TV shows. Star Trek was huge with this. I think Voyager was the worst. About this, I love Voyager. Voyager's one of my favorites. But they will have a very traumatic event in one episode, and the next, which is chronologically next, it's forgotten. And I think that so many people have absorbed that sort of mentality that's just, they use it for, oh, this is the plot point. It shouldn't be the plot point that, like, it should be a plot point about changing your character, because trauma changes your character, changes a person. And if you don't, and if you aren't willing, you know, obviously in general, aren't willing to, like, accept that the depth to which a traumatic experience will change someone, then it shouldn't be in the story. That's, again, same thing with, like, the mental health thing, which is traumatic in and of itself. Like, if you aren't willing to put in the research and find out what it's like, Reddit is my best friend when it comes to doing research about, like, what is it like to get shot? Like, that's traumatic. What does that do to you, like, afterwards? You've got to do the research, or it shouldn't be in the story, or you shouldn't publish the story. Like, that's the thing, is you can write people. I have written a lot of fan fiction for myself about a lot of really dark topics that will never see the light of day, because I use them as a therapeutic experience and then leave them in my Google Drive and never touch them again. And I think a lot of people, especially since we're talking about the audience being young girls, a lot of people, you know, they're growing up with social media being instant gratification, instant, you know, like my stuff. And I love social media, but I think that has translated into the need to publish all of your stuff, like put it all online to get the likes and get the votes and the kudos. But so you can totally write it for yourself and then just never publish it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Archie,
yeah.
What's your take on that?
So I'll be honest. I don't really touch trauma a lot in my own writing, mostly because I know nothing about it. But also when I write, it's escapism more than it is. Here's all the baggage. Throw it on there. So like I don't write a lot of trauma, so I can't say much on that part of it. But the whole point of not publishing works that you have, I can say, yeah, no, that's definitely a better mentality to have about your writing, because I too have lots of fiction that's never going to see the light of day as long as I live. So so being able to write for yourself, being able to write without the pressure of knowing that other people are going to see it, I think like that's also a really healthy way to go about your writing experience, just because you're not going to you're not gonna get positive feedback on everything, and not everything's gonna be shining gold that people are gonna find in a mine. It's going to be there's gonna be some crap in there that is probably better off without people seeing it or saying anything about it, just because you wrote that for you, not for others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's something that especially the younger audience, and again, there is a maturity level that happens where you get to the point where you understand that it's not a matter of having to share it. It was written for you. And now that you've written it for you, you can actually write it for someone else because you can translate it better. Yes. But it's a mentality that is developed over time. And I think one of the other things that and especially with a lot of the fan fiction that I have seen pop up or suggested to me on Wattpad, why I don't know.
My question all the time: what is their algorithm?
Yeah, and why is the algorithm constantly drunk or stoned? Like,
why do they? I'm sorry, but they always request to me my fics. I'm like, listen, I wrote them. I don't need you to request. You don't.
I would actually prefer them to refer my own stuff to me because at least I know it's good, But the covers that they're showing, are erotic in nature, and the propagation of pornography has really influenced a lot of fan fiction. Unfortunately, you have 50 Shades of Grey, which started off as a bad fan fiction of a bad fan fiction. So there's nowhere to go but down. I mean,
I was gonna say My Immortal is worse. So
I don't know if I've seen that one or.
Oh no, My Immortal was it lived in infamy in fan fiction. It was a Twilight fanfic that basically broke the internet with the level of insanity that it was. So it's like when you refer to like a bad fanfic, My Immortal is like the go-to, the stereotype. Sorry, that's just me knowing too much fandom.
Yeah, well, I mean that's what we've seen so much, because you see more and more, at least from what I've seen, more and more abusive relationships showcased in fan fiction. And unfortunately, as much as people will be vehemently disagreeing with me about this, unfortunately, the vast majority of pornography is incredibly violent against women. And that is what we see in a lot of the relationships written by men, not necessarily by women, but by men. And then they write orbs for their eyes. And then I swear to goodness,
one more time.
I will. There will be horrible things that I will do to them. I
was literally reading one that I was really enjoying, but the moment they said orbs, I laughed. I couldn't. It was not happening.
Yeah, as soon as you drop the orbs, it's done. It's just done. But this is what we see, and this is why, you know, that's not good fan fiction at all. And it's actually incredibly dangerous for the young people who are reading it, because I'm sorry, if anyone out there thinks for one moment that when someone says, or, you know, marks it mature and says you have to be 18, and it asks, are you 18? And like anyone
Yes, of
under
course
18
I am,
is
says
like,
the 13-year-old.
darn, they tricked me. Like, I am just,
Yeah.
I'm out of luck. And like, no, they're going to click it.
Yep.
Because humans, unfortunately, are incredibly
It's gonna make them want to
creatures.
click it more because
Yeah, it
they
makes
know
them
that they're
wanna
not
click it more.
supposed to.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you throw in abusive relationships, you know, and in that abusive relationship, you have a character who's thinking suicidal thoughts, or forming eating disorders, or forming, you know, secondary trauma from the abuse. You are propagating the issues that we are currently facing, just in large respect. And fan fiction is a great way to build people up. And that's what I would actually like to see more people doing with their fan fiction, is rather than focusing on all of this incredibly dark, painful stuff. And again, a lot of these
Says angst writer.
young adults are writing it because they're going through it. And they're going through it in that time span that they are writing it, more often than not, from what I've seen. We should be coming alongside and encouraging them. And a lot of people don't. You know,
my rule of thumb when I approach a fanfic is it has to end, it has to have a positive outcome in some form. I'm not going to write says the person who's writing World War II fan fiction about war, but I wasn't going to write it. Like, someone asked me like something about the end on Tumblr. They were like, are they going to be a couple? Like, is this like, oh no, they asked about another potential pairing. And I said, I basically was explaining my reasoning for why I didn't go with that pairing by saying, I'm not going to set up 200,000 words of like relationship building and to some degree romance, only to have at 200,000 words something happen that it was, you know, the concentration camp thing that irrevocably changes what the relationship is, and then you end the story with like trauma being your last note. Like, you can't do. I won't do that. That's one. I do have like very specific things that I will and will not do with fan fiction, and that's one of them. Where if I'm going to write it, or at least I'm going to publish a story, I'm not going to publish a story that's going to end on a note that leaves, number one, it's going to leave the readers like, you don't have a payoff. But number two, it's really damaging to leave it and be like, oh nope, so you're in that low point, wallow in that for the rest of your life. Like, yeah, it doesn't. I can't. That's something I won't cross. It's just like smut. Like, I don't write smut. So like, I won't write smut, and I won't write things that don't end with at least an ending that you can be satisfied with emotionally. Which I wish more people would do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Smut is the lowest form of fan fiction. and just,
well, PWP. So like with porn without plot, like that's like, why do people even, I mean, to each their own, but like, I don't read. No.
And again, it goes back to that. Does it serve a purpose?
Exactly.
And the answer is it doesn't.
Right.
It serves no purpose. And it actually creates bad writing habits for authors. Because there is no story. There is no plot. It is just simply fantasy. And what happens is that when people go from writing that kind of material to trying to actually write a novel, they can't, or they can get a lot of words down, but there will be nothing of substance there.
And I feel like it encourages writing. Number one, I mean, I don't really write explicit sex scenes. Like, usually I'll do like the chapter ends, they close the door, start at the next chapter, right? But it encourages writing sex or intimacy in general that is based purely on the physical, which to me is like so not, like I would much prefer to like be hearing about like what are they thinking, like what about this person is drawing them to you, and like in like a first kiss. Like I was just writing a first kiss the other day, so it's in my mind. But like yeah, there's like physical attraction, but you're not, I don't know, I guess I wouldn't kiss someone who I only had a physical attraction for. Like there's gotta be some substance there. And with PWP and smut in general, like a lot of that's lost, where it's literally just like, yeah, there was only one bed, so like they went at it. Like that's, so then you go and write a story, and like you don't have the tools to write a like emotionally deep scene, because you've been writing physical the whole time. And that's like such yeah, I don't know. I take
No, I agree.
Yeah, I think one of the other big things that I see that I think people can do, I think one of the ways that like, and this kind of harkens back to, one of the opening points that we had, is that, if you're going to write fan fiction, do it with intentionality. Have a plan going into it. If you're wanting and desiring to write your own novel someday, and you're just like, you know what, I'm not comfortable just writing, which that's entirely another topic right there that I will happily die upon that soapbox. You can dive into these worlds, and if you show the same level of dedication to your fan fiction that you will show to your actual novel, then you will improve as not only as a writer but as an author, because you're going to learn how to use different things, because you're having people beta read. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed Wattpad, or still enjoy Wattpad, is because you can leave those inline comments.
Yes.
I've actually developed an entire writing process around doing that based on my experience on Wattpad, and it's allowed the people that I've worked with to write drafts in 3 months. And it's from doing that, because I've learned a certain pace that was based on my time and learning how to craft binge readable stories for people on Wattpad. And so I've taken that and translated it into my own writing. And also I've read a lot, and that's the other thing, is that if you've never read Lord of the Rings and you're only basing it off the movie, you can write fan fiction. Is it going to be satisfying to diehard Tolkien fans? Probably not, because there's going to be a lot of context that you're missing. If you have never seen or watched Lord of the Rings, then reading Lord of the Rings first, so you understand the context, the characters, all that kind of stuff. Hey, Sako, welcome to the stream. You'll see Sako comments pop up here in a second. I have popped out on this side. So
okay.
So if you are going to do that, or if you want to write a Sherlock Holmes, but it's based on the BBC Sherlock, then you should have watched Sherlock in order to understand the context that in which you're writing. That goes for anything. You do your research, you do your due diligence, you are going to improve as a writer. To your point earlier, you talked about, oh crap, I have the travel times mixed up, which travel times is the bane of a writer's existence, because more often than not, we just don't get it right. That's why I had to actually sketch out a map.
Oh, I love scene sketches,
so that way I could actually see what I was writing, and I can give myself like, okay, I know that people only walk this much. If you're running, you can run this much. How does the terrain then come into play? Like, it's not flat ground all the way through. So you have to research those things. If you have the desire to make money as an author, and you want to start off with fan fiction to build your craft, to do that, do it with intentionality.
How's that?
Technically writing fan fiction, but releasing it under the company I'm borrowing from.
Oh wow.
Wait, so is it like licensed?
Yeah, I'm curious about that because
That's
to my knowledge, like you cannot publish.
Yeah.
You can't publish and make money off of fan fiction of somebody else's work.
Right, unless it's like licensed.
So I'm super curious about that.
No, money for my
because like Tolkien, like the Tolkien estate, they explicitly say, do not write fan fiction. It is not approved, and all of us fan fiction nerds are just like, thanks for the. Well,
okay. In my defense, as a Tolkien fan fiction author, there are specific authors who have contacted like fanfiction.net and AO3, I believe. Both have lists of authors and fandoms you cannot write in, because they have the person specifically reached out and said you can't do that. So I don't know that Tolkien's done that, the estate, because if they haven't done that, then
it's I've actually looked it up. It's on the Tolkien estate in their contract, technically. But I mean, like, who knows?
Right. As long as you're not making money off of it, then like that's honestly the biggest compliment I will ever get is if someone writes fan fiction of my work.
And there's other authors out there too who just straight up say like, don't write fan fiction. I think Rowling is actually one of them who doesn't want fan fiction of Harry Potter.
She failed there because that's the largest fandom for fan fiction that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I would say that Harry Potter probably surpasses Lord of the Rings in terms of fandom size. The only one that might be bigger would be Star Wars. Or Star Trek, one of the two.
Yeah. The thing about Star Trek, which is one of my fandoms, that's so questionable to me, because you have to get permission from the original content creator, not the publisher.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that, and that's something that other people don't know too. Is that they actually I answered this question in a Facebook group. They were wanting to publish their fan fiction, and I was like, you got to be very, very careful what you do there. Bye, Heather. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Very, very careful what you do there, because if you start making a profit off of it and you get big enough to where you're noticed by either the estate or the original person who owns the rights to that, they will usually first give you a cease and desist. Like, stop doing it, take it down, period. Or they will sue your backside to oblivion for the money that you technically earned using their property.
Yeah.
And their intellectual rights. Now, I don't know, maybe a publisher can get licensing for a wide range and people can author under that umbrella. That would be possible, and that'd be very interesting. If that's the case, Into Depravity is totally going there.
If that's the case, hit me up.
It's canon. Yeah, that is very interesting. I think one of the other things too with the characters is that they almost always end up being Mary Sue or Gary Stu. They write a self-insert and they want to give them all these super cool powers. I did that with Udar. Udar started off that way. That was a self-insert into Lord of the Rings for myself, and Udar was a catchy Irish name that actually has meaning, that blew people's minds wide open. And what actually happened, when it went from self-insert to him becoming his own character, was actually when I offed Mary accidentally. And without malice. It was just like, oops, he died. Yeah, look up Dark Pacts right now. I'm gonna have to do that. I'm curious.
Looking it up.
Notes for future self. Dark.
This is like wait, I want you to finish your thoughts first, but then I have another like positive of fan fiction that's also.
So the self-insert actually became his own character, and then he started kind of growing and developing more and more and more. And now I've been able to take that and actually use him in my the fantasy novel that I'm working on now. And it's been fun because he's even grumpier and angstier than he was previously, which is hard to believe, but it's true. And it's one of those things where if you're going to start off with a self-insert, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but see how far you can push the character before they break. Then because once you've reached that breaking point, it's actually no longer you. It is their own character because they're facing things that you're not having to deal with. And so it creates a very interesting dynamic for your characters. And don't just copy paste characters, come up with some originality, for the characters. My Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings, he is the same at his core, but I'm showing different sides to him that one, I don't think Tolkien explored. I think even Peter Jackson's version of Aragorn, I would say that I tried to mesh the two together.
Yeah, they're so different. Sorry.
And, well, I mean, look at Frodo versus
Faramir. Can we get into Faramir, please? Treebeard. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm too passionate about PJ and his.
Yeah, there, some artistic licenses, and Legolas is a total Gary Stew throughout the entire movie.
He literally got to make fan fiction of Lord of the Rings, which I'm jealous of. Don't get me wrong, but that's basically what he did. Yeah,
there's more Legolas fanfics, and this is
Legomances. Oh my gosh!
Speaking of fanfics, before I get off my soapbox here,
I'm going to jump on a small one.
If you're going to do fan fiction, sometimes picking the character that has been brutally beaten to a pulp by every other bad fan fiction writer is not the way to go. Try doing something different. Do we see fan fictions with Sam?
No.
Do we see fan fictions with Gimli?
80% sure you're inspiring Silz right now.
Well, no, I'm having flashbacks to a series of one-shots I did. I did a one-shot of Eorith the healer as a child. And then I did a one-shot of Frediger Bolger, Fatty Bolger. I did him because I live for that. Like, that's why my Fan Royal Chronicles is Elrohir, an Elrohir romance. Like, you don't see that. And I was like, well, Elrohir needs some love. And so, like, that's
right. Take these characters that aren't established in canon.
Right.
As acting a certain way.
Original characters.
You can do so much. You can do so much with it. Same with Star Wars, right?
Yep.
You don't necessarily choose Luke. I wish I could write a Star Wars fan fiction. I feel like if I tried to attempt that, it would look like a 5-year-old. And then he whacked his laser sword, and it just it wouldn't be good. And it's so multi-layered that I had attempted to after playing KOTOR, and I stopped after about 3 paragraphs because I realized I was in way over my head. But take some of the more obscure, not necessarily the unknown, but the more obscure ones that are kind of on the fringe, and do a story about them. Do a story that doesn't involve someone entering into the Fellowship of the Ring for the umpteenth time.
Oh my gosh,
the Second Age, for Pete's sake.
Too many. Can we have First Age fan fiction, please? Although I will say, the quality of Silmarillion fan fiction is incredible because everyone who reads the Silmarillion knows how to read and write. And so if you're writing Silmarillion fan fiction, usually turns out pretty good.
That's next level fanfic right there.
Yeah.
That's next level fanfic. That's people. That's like I think the Star Wars equivalent is people writing on like the Old Republic. Like that's next level Star Wars nerddom.
I love the first age. I will die with my Noldor until I'll just die with them because they're my favorite. But oh, can I actually, this is a perfect segue into what I was going to say. Can I real quick
go for it?
Okay, so speaking of Marvel and X-Men, so the biggest thing writing fanfiction that ever helped me learn how to write was on FFN. I'm going to give some shout outs here, but on fanfiction.net, there was, oh my gosh, it's been so long, 5 years now. There was a collaboration that I was reached out and asked if I would take part in this fanfic collab that was Hunger Games style world Marvel characters. It was super cool. Basically, it was 24 authors, 24 tributes was the idea. So everyone got a tribute. Everyone got to write a character, and you not only like did plot come into play, but writing style came into play with how long your character lasted in the games. And I got to, so at the time I was like, 17 when I started, 17. I got to write alongside some incredible authors. Two of the four that I'm thinking of are published. Kimmy, who's Knucklehead Cowgirl, she writes X-Men fanfics, so that's why I was thinking about that. And then Shelby, who's Robbie Poo 2341. She is published. She does editing. She's a freelance editor as well, actually. But I believe that's what. But I got so the ability to write alongside people who were better authors than me was the thing that changed my life. I mean, I would not be anywhere close to the writer I am today if I hadn't gotten to do that. So like. It lasted, the collab lasted 4.5 years. We just finished up in 2019 because it was 3 stories. I remember you telling me about that story. Yeah, it was incredible. And it's under the stories are under the username, the freelancer collaboration. But I mean, number one, I made lifelong friends. Number two, I got to, it ended up in some cases being almost a cross between role playing and writing, because we would open Google Docs sometimes and just go back and forth, and like you would write the dialogue, and then later you'd go back in and you'd insert like what's going on and whatever, and then you learned how, like, I learned so many things. I learned I got introduced to other people's writing styles I had never been exposed to before. So like one of them, Cindy, who I've met her. She has a book, and reading her book introduced me to like a new style of writing sword fights. And that was really cool. And so then I was like, I'm going to try integrating this, into my writing, see what I can do with it. But collaborating with other authors was the best thing that ever happened to me with fan fiction, which is why I think people underestimate the importance of the community aspect of fandom. Because that's what got me to be a better writer, was working with them.
I gotta say, this is fantastic. I love this because Revan is freaking awesome, and KOTOR is life. I'm still waiting for KOTOR 3, and I will probably it will probably be the equivalent of everybody waiting for Gur Martin to finish his book.
He stole J.R.R. Tolkien's R.R.
Yeah, Gur and Gur Tolkien.
Donald Ronald.
Actually, this is actually how I started off. Even before I started my fan fiction, is actually I would do the role plays on forums back when forums were the bomb.
Me too.
And MySpace was the place to be.
Yeah.
Wow, even I'm too young to remember that.
I'm old, guys.
No. Hey, to be fair, I do vaguely remember MySpace. But yeah, role playing was how I got into writing as well, because I did Warrior Cats.
I don't understand what Warrior Cats is.
Aaron Hunter.
I literally cannot wrap my mind around
best
Warrior
work
Cats,
that's
even though I
done.
put it in the actual like
I know it was in the
thumbnail.
background.
Yeah, it's in the thumbnail because
Listen.
I know people on Wattpad and they're like middle school age for the most part.
Yep.
Like it's that or My Little Pony, and I'm like WTF
MLP, I don't quite understand.
with this. Like I don't.
Warriors is fantastic. Warriors is maybe I won't go into detail, but it's maybe one of the only like kid series. The Warriors by Aaron Hunter, who it's actually like a trio or might be 4 authors who write them. Warriors, Percy Jackson, and Narnia were like my childhood. Warriors, getting to do Warriors was really cool. It was weird though. I mean, it sort of introduced me to like I because I was writing cats and you're writing animals, like the way they like dialogue tags were weird. So like jumping from like cat related dialogue tags to regular describing humans.
What I want to know is how everybody's able to translate meow, 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 meow into words and they understand.
They're humanized. Like the series is it's from their perspective, and there's like 2 legs are humans, and like they basically okay. So the idea is that in real life, feral cats will form clans relating to survival. They don't like each other, but they will form clans. And that's what the idea came from was, well, what if the clans had like political, religious, like what if they had like a society? What if that we don't, like humans don't pick up on? And so that was what it came from. So they're basically humans. They're just cats.
I mean, that makes sense for cats. I could totally see them like Planet of the Apes style taking over the world by banding the clans together.
Yeah, except they all hate each other.
And subduing the 2 legs. Like I can see this as being a thing. I would write this.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, I can't recommend it enough. Coming from someone who used to work at Barnes & Noble, I would recommend Aaron Hunter's books all the time. So yeah, they're really good.
My only introduction to that series was there was a girl that I had to work with. We worked at the summer camp together. I swear it was like every other day she was coming in with a new Warriors Cats book, and she was, drawing in her notebook all the cats and her little fan fiction comics, and I okay, and I couldn't.
I distinctly remember this, and I actually wish I still had it just for nostalgia. But I had like what are they called, the black and white notebooks? What are those referred to as? Marble
composition.
Composition book. I had a composition notebook that was pasted pictures of cats, and I would form like my own ideas of what the clans were like. And it's addicting. Like the Warrior Cats, that actually, because this was right when I was addicted to the internet at this point, because I would role play, like, and it was just like, yeah, it was cool. It was like writing your own story. And then I got to the point where I was like, why am I waiting for other people to write my stories when I could just write them myself? So that's why I ended up transitioning to like regular writing. But yeah, Warrior Cats is cool. Verity's here.
Hey!
Yeah, I thought I told Verity. I thought I told you. Okay, well.
I could have swore I told her, but
yeah.
I don't remember a lot.
I posted it on our Discord server for the record. And then I also posted it on Tumblr, so maybe you'll get some Tumblr people.
That is awesome. AOL. Oh, man. I seriously remember RPing on MSN Messenger. Like, and we'd get like the nudge. And like, this is how far back this goes, right? Bebo.
Oh wow!
RP'd on Bebo, like
Jeez.
a boss. Actually, that's where the whole Tales of the Fourth Age fanfic started. Was Bebo, with me RPing with a bunch of friends, and I then took some of the characters and then like fleshed it out. I drew a map. I mean. The whole thing, and then like it looks very, very different than what it did on Bebo. It's legible for one, and
it's legible. Sorry,
it like seriously, like it was so much fun. I
miss
to take that and then turn it into like a full-on fiction.
Yep. Yeah, why wait for other people when I can do it myself?
write the story that you enjoy writing. Like seriously, that's half the fun of fan fiction. You know, if the way that I like to write fan fiction is that part of it is that what if is like, okay, well, what if this happened, and what would be the ramifications of it? When I inserted Udar into Middle Earth, it didn't start off so much as a what if. The big what if came actually when I brought Boromir back to life. Hashtag spoilers.
I love him.
And then it was Brodar and Boromir.
Yes, sorry, this is being actually memories.
Watching their interactions with each other, and then the ramifications that you actually start seeing happen towards the end of Boromir's return. Not only that, but like I actually wrote a romance where Frodo stays in the Shire. He doesn't leave. He finds a reason to stay in Arabella.
Sorry, yes.
And so, you know, it was those kinds of things. Be like, you know what? Dang it, Frodo deserves to be some happiness. And so that's what I wrote. And you know, like what would happen if Boromir had a chance at redemption to redeem himself? How would that happen? That's how book 4 happened.
That's my shtick. Like, sorry, that's how the whole Fëanorial Chronicles came about. Literally, these was me going, what's the end game? The end game is Melkor comes back. Morgoth. I call him Melkor because I love Silmarillion more. But Morgoth comes back, and I was like, well, how do we get there? Well, let's see. And so then it was just like taking little random things and changing like certain, like the only big thing I changed was having there be a descendant of Fëanor who survived. That was it. And then like everything else was the ramifications of that existing. And then like, yeah, I love it. I could go on forever. Yeah. Fëanorial Chronicles are my babies, but I abandoned them and then come back so late that I feel bad because I have so many people waiting for them. But I'm like, yeah, I know, same, Pilly. But because I haven't read your stuff in a while. Because once I read a fanfic, very often I won't go back. Like, so it depends. There are only
Verity, for whatever reason, decided to put herself through all of the angsty feels again. She did. I don't know why, but she had commented on. She's like, I don't know why I'm back reading this, but like that's seriously like that's what I want.
Yeah.
For my stories. And I built my stories to be that way on purpose. Is that even though I take your heart out and beat it to a bloody pulp before throwing it back at you and saying you're welcome, is that you come back to it again because it was a well done story. It's not a story that you're going to be like, that was great, and you know you put it on the bookshelf. There are books on this bookshelf that I come back to again and again and again because the story was told so well. Yeah.
And sorry, I was relating to that. One of the things that is the most flattering thing to me, well, two things. Fan art. When people do fan art or fan like creations of my characters, I will honestly start crying. Like, it is the most flattering thing to me. The other thing is when people come back and will leave comments like a second, third, fourth time, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I've never, like V3 Olympus on Wattpad, love her. She literally will come back, and every time she reads, she's like, hey, I'm back, just want to let you know, like I'm reading it again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't, and because I know how, or people who leave comments that are like, I binged it, like I read this in a sitting. Because there are so many, I have so much.
Which is impressive for your stories because they are long.
The number of times I've gotten a review from someone that said, yeah, I started this morning and ended at 3 a.m. Thanks. And I'm like, sorry.
I forgot to eat or even go to the bathroom. I've actually soiled myself. I've sat here in this chair for so long.
The thing is, I know what that's like. Like when you find that fic, when you find that thing that you literally, like the unexpected and Millie Fournier. I just referred to it as Millie Fournier, which was the Hobbit fic that inspired the Silmarillion one. Like, I will go back. I went back like 2 years later and was like, do you remember this fic? Like, I want to go read it again. And I'll read it again and I'll leave a comment like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I'm rereading this. Because that's so, inspiring to me, like that I have the power to create something that someone else has gone back to time and time again. And people find new things every time they read my stories. Like someone just commented, she said, yeah, I'm back at the beginning again for the Band of Brothers series that's still ongoing. And I'm like, great, now when you're reading, tell me if you pick up on things. Like, like I want to see, like, what are people tying in? And it's so flattering.
Yeah, I love because I like every now and then I'll get comments from someone new reading through, and it's always my favorite because it always starts with like, no. And it's so much fun to watch that progression in the comments, and I'm just laughing like.
Okay, yes. Pilly was actually.
It's so much fun. It's so good to watch that, and I'll go and I'll comment and I'll respond because I'm still wanting to be interactive with them, despite the fact that probably most of my followers think I'm dead.
I thought you were dead. I was like, where do you go on Wattpad?
But like the things that they comment on are the things that I put in there so purposefully.
Yeah.
And to have someone comment on that or to catch that nuance or to come to that conclusion just a little bit faster, and they have that realization of where I'm going with it, even though and they find I purposefully built it so that way more often than not the reader would know just a little bit before the characters finally figure it out. Like I play up the fact that I'm going to brutally kill Aragorn, and all of the readers are just like, you wouldn't dare. And I'm like here with a big red button, be like,
watch me.
I go like full Anakin.
You underestimate my power.
You underestimate my power. Totally.
I love how we went to that same reference. That's exactly what I feel like. Okay, related to this comment, the funniest thing to me, really quick, was I was looking through comments people were leaving 2 days ago, and I see Pilly's comment that was just no, and then no, it was the reverse. The other person was like screaming about no, and then there was like a step. There was like one other comment, and then the top was Pilly going yay, and they were like 50 chapters apart, and I thought it was the funniest thing because I'm like, if there's anything that summarizes how this fic has gone, it's that right there. And it was so funny. I screenshotted it, actually. I will screenshot my favorite comments to go back and look back on and be like, look, I'm not a terrible writer. So like that's literally what I do.
I think like if the one thing, because we'll have to wrap up here pretty quick.
Yeah.
But like, because we literally could just do this all day. Just to quote Captain America.
I could do this all
day. The number one thing to me that if you're going to write fan fiction that can make you a better author is learning to tell a good story, not throwing what you think you need to throw in there or writing how you think you have to write or adding just a bunch of random stuff because you think that it needs it. Or you think that the readers aren't going to like it. But telling a good story, it is an art form that is really, it's kind of on its deathbed in large part. And this goes for not just fan fiction, because I think it's already died. But for fiction as a whole, like the art of telling a good story is so rare. That's why I can read one book and then never pick it up again. It's not that the story was bad. It wasn't done as good as it could have been. I didn't invest in the characters enough. The one that I go back to, and Bree from the Discord chat, she'll know the Song of Albion trilogy by Stephen R. Lawhead is one of my all-time favorite trilogies. And I'll go back and I'll reread that entire trilogy once every couple of years because the story in it is so compelling and it's so good. It's good versus evil and the hero's journey. There's a reason why we have these, tell a good story, focus on the story of it. And and if you do that, you will grow and become a better author, hands down, without question. If you only stick to writing the bare minimum and kind of just copying and pasting someone's idea, then you are a blogger.
Yeah.
You know, because you'll find thousands of articles about the same exact thing. Don't be like that. Don't fall into that same trap. If you like that story, go, okay, what's one major way I could change this story and that I could completely rewrite it? You know, use your imagination. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, their imagination has been kind of stifled because people don't read as much as they used to, especially physical books. You know, you need to read to learn some of the finer finessing of writing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, Archie, on that?
On what? Hold up. Like on reading, or
just
you
like,
went through quite a bit there.
like something that like without a doubt can make somebody a better author, whether it's using fan fiction.
Ooh, that's you really touched on a lot of the stuff that I've picked up over, you know, just you know, reading and finding the things that you can change and what you can do. I mean, I'm not sure that there's much more that I could add.
That's fair. Silz, how about you?
Reiterating everything that was said, but also one thing I would add would be learning how to embrace the freedom that fan fiction offers, while tempering that with doing your research and sticking to the important parts of canon. Like learning how to, because fan fiction is a really great tool to expand how you write, try new genres, like things like that. But you have to use that. I guess what I'm saying is you have to use that. If you want to get better at writing, you have to embrace that and then use that with the purpose of moving forward in your writing. So yeah, I've tried cyberpunk stuff. Like, I've tried so many genres that I never would have tried if I hadn't just sat down and been like, let's do this. Because I know fan fiction is there. There's no strings attached. You can do what you want. But you have to go with that mentality, embracing that as the pathway to getting better and then working towards that. I guess that would be my second biggest thing, other than research. It's that one.
Yeah, for sure. And then Verity brought up a good point. Part of the problem is when people write to expectations and only to expectations. Mm-hmm. Overall, the market, you're told to write to expectations in your genre audience or whatever. And that's one of the reasons why I probably will never write to market. Mm-hmm. I'm going to write for storytelling and for storytelling alone. I don't plan on making millions, by writing my stories. It would be a nice bonus, sure, but that's not my expectation. I want to revive the art of storytelling. That's why I started the Bard's Storytelling Academy, is to actually help people tell a good story by giving them foundations upon which that they can build their stuff. That's one of the reasons why I do story coaching and the mentoring, so I can walk somebody through that storytelling aspect of it that seems so lost, because they're like, well, if I want my fantasy book to be published, then I need dragons, goblins, orcs, elves, dwarves, and then I'll throw in something random to kind of offset everything else that's new, and it's like that's great. There's places for that, but there's more to it. It is telling a good story that is going to last beyond the trend that is currently in the market. And the market also fluctuates. If you write a book that tells a good story, you are here. and the market is going to go like this.
Mhm.
If you're writing a book to market, guess what you're going to write? It's going to look like this. You're not going to find a sweet spot in the market because it's constantly fluctuating, and you're never going to write what you want to write because you're chasing after the market every single time.
Mhm.
Same with fan fiction. Whatever's trendy with fan fiction, like Legolas, Legolas trendy, that will probably be a never-ending trend, honestly.
I hope so.
That's here to stay.
That will be a forever thing.
Never.
Much to Orlando Bloom's probably dismay.
Chagrin. Yes.
But it's, you can build an audience without having to chase the market. Like I built a audience of other Lord of the Rings fanatics like myself by writing fan fiction. And in many cases, you guys have followed me in the other endeavors that I've been doing and helping support that. And I know that when I publish my book, like, I'm going to be able to give it to you guys. And I know that because you've enjoyed my style of storytelling, you're going to enjoy these books. And that's the benefit of kind of like building a community of people around you who enjoy similar things that you do, is that you're not having to worry about the market. You have a following that it would be willing to buy your book. It doesn't matter if it's only one person. One person buys your book and it's not Aunt Bertha. I mean, you've already made it.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's why when people, the most flattering thing I think in my readers is that they will follow me from fandom to fandom into fandoms that they do not engage in.
Exactly.
Like that is incredible to me, that I have people who read my Marvel stuff who see I'm writing Band of Brothers and go, oh, I'll try it. I'm like, really? Like, you're really like, and I now these days, like, I do approach my fan fiction as what if the person hasn't seen the series, and try to embrace that. But in the beginning I was like, you're a Lord of the Rings fan. Like, why are you reading my Marvel stuff and then my MASH stuff? And then like, because they like my writing. And so I know that's why I've embraced Wattpad, because I know, like, if I do get to the point where I want to publish the original I'm writing, like, I'll have 850 people who at least will look at it and say, hey, maybe I'll give it a shot.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. And I think that's so important because, one of my big frustrations is, and this is kind of a thing in general, when they're saying, like, you can only write in your genre. If you're going to write in another genre, do it under a pen name. And I honestly, I don't ascribe to that, because I've read, Ted Decker's books, and he does fantasy. He's done psychological thrillers. I mean, he's done a variety of different things. I read him because I know I expect excellence from his writing. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. You know the name, so you follow it because you know it's quality.
Right. And that's what, because I have plans for Celtic fantasy. I have plans for science fiction. I have plans for dystopian. I mean, I have a whole dystopian trilogy, like vampire dystopian trilogy, that my Mexi roll and I had worked on at some point. And at some point, I'm going to write and finish those as well. But people are going to read it because they enjoy my writing. Not because it's one fandom.
Oh yeah, because if it wasn't you saying vampire dystopian, I would have walked out immediately.
Right. But we know your writing quality, so I'm willing to pick it up. Like, that's the difference. Like, I don't.
These vampires don't sparkle.
Are they more like
ruthless
Buffy?
and savage?
Are they like Buffy vampires? Buffy Vampire Slayer vampires?
No, we're talking like underworld, like freaky.
Castlevania.
Like they are bad vampires. But I mean, it's the dystopian aspect of it was so I can't get into that. But I will go on for a long time about that. But that was the one thing that I told my friend. I was like, if we're writing, because he was a Twilight, he was a Twihard, and I was like, no sparkly vampires. If you even want me to work on this with you, you swear to me now, on the blood of your children, that these vampires will not sparkle in any way, shape, or form. He's like, okay.
But they're
No. You've got to throw in the reference at some point. But if it isn't but it should be something like his eyes sparkled as he watched his victim die. And if that's not how you do it, it's not worth it.
I can't even mention the word sparkles in there. It just feels wrong. But what was different, but the way that we did it, and this again was a lot of working with fan fiction to begin with, and then kind of transitioning to different things, is that I saw how bad Twilight was done, and I wanted to make something that could kill it. And so I planned a trilogy with my friend to kill Twilight. Period.
That's the new vampire trend.
No one will even remember Twilight because they'll be like, do you remember this? Do you remember the Lamea Chronicles? And they're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's right. Real vampires. And we use Latin terms for the vampires.
Oh, good.
So, I mean, we have an entire mythology built into this. And so whenever I finish the 12-book fantasy series that I currently have planned and the last half of book 5 and book 6 of the fan fiction.
Right. Are you abandoning them or are they on hold? Are they abandoned or on hold?
They're on hold.
Okay.
Yeah, they are on hold because I do want to finish them.
Yeah,
because
that's
you put on Thomas Bergenson's Empire of Angels song. And imagine this is how the cavalry is going to come riding in book 6. You will feel all the angsty feels.
That's me. Yeah, I can't because I could go on, but I have a scene like that with a music like that in the final book of Fanfiction Chronicles, and I'm like, I need to get to this point.
Oh, yeah, I'm right there with you, but I haven't even started, so I can't.
I'm there, but I'm not.
No, I'm not. I'm in spirit.
Yeah. In spiritu sancto. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here.
Yes, I need food.
And thanking everybody who has watched this and who will watch this, and all of the fandom nerds out there who enjoyed nerding out with us. Feel free again to post comments down below about fan fiction. I enjoy it immensely. But there are links down in the show notes to Archie's Instagram, which may or may not be abandoned, more or less.
It's not. I've been moving back towards it. I like to put artwork on there.
Peer pressure Archie into posting more. That's what we're saying. Silz's Wattpad is also down in the show notes. So if you love angsty elves from the first age of Lord of the Rings, you should probably go read her stuff. If you love apparently Band of Brothers, or
Marvel or MASH or okay, you've got to read it. Wait, you need to read it and give me opinions.
Yeah, I could probably read it at some point because
I don't read on Wattpad anymore, so no pressure. I don't have the time.
Yeah, I'm usually just editing other people's stuff. So by the time I get around to actually doing mine, which I'm moving towards publishing in with the publisher in June. So and it's with the publisher that I freelance through. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed there.
Yeah.
But if you want to read all sorts of really high quality stuff, go read Silz's stuff. If you guys want to read all of my angsty stuff, then nope, this side right here. Yeah. Silverhand 19 is where you will find me on Wattpad. I have anywhere from poetry to epic rap battles of Middle Earth, which I introduced somebody to. Talk about nostalgia. Oh man, the feels.
Mahal's beard.
I was emotional.
Remember the beard?
It was absolutely amazing. To one shots for Lord of the Rings, one shots for Frozen because my daughter was in the hospital for 3 days and we watched Frozen back to back 10.5 times. And so I had to destroy everything that Arendelle and Frozen stood for. And I accomplished that.
I want to read it.
Yeah, you should go read it. It's Frozen Aftermath. It's on my Wattpad.
Oh yes.
It's a one shot. I think it's like 1,500 words. I did it in like 1,500 words. I completely destroyed it.
You're talking to a Disney nerd here.
I'm a Disney nerd, but like the child was obsessed with it for who knows how long. And I just, nope, can't do it anymore. Not that one. Any of the other ones are fine. Just that one.
Yeah, you guys should definitely go check that out. Verity read the Frozen book. Hey, Bury Bed Books.
It's yeah.
She came at the very end of
It's
everything. At the end of all things.
Insane.
Thank you. I appreciate. I do have very awesome swag clothes. I work very hard.
It's true.
Seriously, like I have a writing shirt for every day of the week. I have enough to cover the entire day. I don't have to wear boring shirts anymore. I can wear this.
You should merch. You should make Teespring merch for like things you say.
Oh, bardisms. I should totally create shirts for
this is
bardic
a
sayings.
YouTuber.
I did have like Silver's sagely sayings on Wattpad at one point.
Yeah, I want t-shirts.
That were pretty fantastic. I just don't know anybody who would buy swag.
I would buy a shirt that says overly villainous villains who love villainy. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay, I might have to do that. Very bad book. We are not currently talking about how much Frozen 2 sucked, but it did.
What? No,
it didn't have to happen. No.
80s music video.
Kill it with fire.
80s music video.
Listen,
Beard bro. Okay, Verity, you're giving me ideas. Yes. Hashtag beard bro. Okay, I may have to invest in some swag. I may have to figure out how to do this
until my dying breath. So we can discuss this later.
Right, man.
I will.
All right,
this is going to be blowing up tonight.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. See, like between my mom and my wife, whom I love so much, they've invested in writing shirts. So I've got awesome I'm a writer and a dad, so nothing scares me. I have that.
That's good.
And it's entirely accurate. What was the other one? You're coming dangerously close to being put in my book.
Oh, yes.
You are. If I'm not writing, I'm thinking about writing. Then writing facts is probably my favorite one. Then there's the one that I actually made for my business, which was writing is hard without a bard. I was super proud of that one.
Cute.
Yeah, I was super proud of that one.
I only have one writing shirt, and that makes me sad now. It was a gag gift, and now I'm just sad that I don't have more.
I think my only thing is my NaNoWriMo winner shirt. I think I have a NaNoWriMo winner shirt. That's legit. Yeah, I did NaNoWriMo in January and I did JanoWriMo because I injured my shoulder, and so I couldn't actually type or use my hand for like 2 months. I've won one November Nano and then got really close 2019, but had some family issues and then wasn't able. It was like not an emotional place to finish writing. I got so close, but I love Nano. I live for it.
You guys actually would have had all of book 5 of the Forgotten One had I not injured my shoulder, and because that was my Nano project 2 years ago. You guys would have had it in its entirety, but then I tore the pec muscle and the labrum, and so my arm was just all slinged up. And
I remember that.
And so that was a bit of a bummer. But I got 25,000. I was literally halfway through writing it when I injured my shoulder, and then I just wasn't able to go back to it, because then in January I was like, you know what, I'm just going to sit down, and then I pantsed the bejesus out of City of Snow and Stars.
Yeah, and I remember that too.
in book or draft 2 of working on that. Why did I tell you that, Palindil? Because I want to further the angst and torment that I'm putting you guys through for that. It will be worth it. I do promise that, because Maddie Sprinkle,
that's what I tell people,
came up with a devious plot together. Just absolutely devious. So, and one day it will see the light of day.
Keep telling yourself that. That's what I tell myself every day.
That's what all of Gur Martin's followers are telling themselves every day too. Like, someday he'll finish. I doubt it.
I know. I just gotta like find someone to write it after I'm dead. Be like, hey, you were a good reader. Do you want to like draft this for me if I die first?
You're just gonna Robert Jordan the entire endeavor.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I started outsourcing. Sorry. I did to my brother. I was like, hey, you want to write this? He's like, sure. Here, go. He started writing in my universe. Anyway.
Nice. That's a good way to do it. Recruit it.
Yeah. All right, I have to get lunch. It's now 2 hours past lunch.
And I do have to go as well. But thank you guys who have been able to join in and watch, and to Silz and Archie for joining in and talking about this, and for Corvus too, who had to hop off earlier. If you guys want to follow them, their links are down below. I didn't provide you with a link. I'm going to make you work for it if you so badly want to follow me. And it's also because I just totally spaced on it until now. So
okay.
we're going to roll with that. Thank you guys again so much. And we will talk to you guys next time.